And we are live.
Thank you. All right, today is Monday, February 17th, and this is a Student Services Committee meeting. School District of Menominee Falls Board of Education Student Services Committee, there is a possibility that a quorum of the full membership of the Board of Education may be in attendance at board committee meetings, but there will be no full board action taken at any board committee meeting. Only members of the committee may vote on any item on the agenda, and a live broadcast will be streamed on the school district's YouTube page. To watch the recorded meeting, please visit our School District of Menominee Falls YouTube site. It is 6 p.m. and the meeting is called to order in the Village Hall Upper Level Conference Room 3344-3345, Pilgrim Road, Menominee Falls. Has the meeting been properly posted?
Yes, it is.
All right, I need a motion to approve the minutes from January 20th.
I'll motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Minutes are approved. Moving right along, discussion item, first up on the agenda is special education updates. So thanks again, Alec, for coming in and giving us the update.
Yeah, thank you guys for taking the time. Dan, do you mind if I project?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll get out of here. I just have a small document, nothing as fancy as.
Yes, I know what document you're using, yeah, it's good.
Okay, so these are just some updates. I'm just gonna briefly talk about academic performance for our students with disabilities, some family engagement stuff, as well as some educator support as well. So just some highlights from an academic standpoint. Currently, 82% of our students are on track to meet all of their IEP goals. That's up from 75% last year. So that feels really good, but we're looking to absolutely continue that success with the goal of at least getting up to 85%. So our next step in that realm is to actually begin a book study around specially designed instruction, which is the specific instruction we give to students for those specific disability-related needs. But we're really looking to do it at K-12 level is give all of our teachers like a common understanding of what SDI looks like in our district, and to try and have that happen in the regular education environment so that we can make sure our students with disabilities are meeting those grade level standards that all of our students are hopefully meeting as well. We also started a co-planning initiative at the high school level, which was just getting our regular ed teachers and special ed teachers together to do some co-planning. Again, supporting that access to the regular education standards. Our next steps is just continue that, setting a time once a month aside at the high school level, and then looking to parlay that into the middle school level as well. And then we've also been doing a lot of progress monitoring training. That's been implemented and ongoing. Our school psychologists have been really instrumental in this, helping our special education teachers learn how to progress monitor those IEP goals multiple times per month. I actually think this is one of the most important things that's gotten us to that 82%. It's really simple, like if our teachers can figure out what's working, what's not working, they have the expertise to make those adjustments, provide that good instruction for our students. Any question on those academic updates?
Just with the book study, how, you know, it said beginning, how is that going? Like, have you gotten any feedback?
Yeah, so all of our elementary school teachers got the book and have started reading it. I haven't gotten any feedback from them yet.
Sure.
And then high school staff is getting the book this coming Friday.
Okay, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, again, just trying to leverage those resources in the reg ed environment because that's where the standards are, that's where the content are, that's where the rigor is. So we're really looking to leverage that.
Sure.
Do you track attendance for special ed as well? And how is attendance tracking in from supporting of the goal of reaching 85? Is it going good?
That's a really good question. So if that number would be included if attendance is related to their IEP goals,
Okay.
but that's definitely data that I can get you separately.
I would
As
like
well.
that, only because I know that there's a correlation in regular ed that says, hey, if they're in the seats, they're learning and it helps with the goals, so I'd love to see attendance.
Absolutely.
And then I would actually like, if you, when you get feedback on the book study and how that's going and implementation of that thought process, the feedback from the teachers would be good to know.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And is some of this or all of it or portions of it, on Monday, we have the
Yes.
full board presentation where we do strategic plan updates. It's our second strategic plan update, and we all have a similar question. Obviously, you know, Mr. Halps and I have already talked, so what are your thoughts about that and some of this information probably?
Yeah, this will definitely be included in that part as well.
Thank you.
So from a family engagement perspective, we just created a resource library, and we're gonna start seeking feedback from families and staff in order to publish that. So really what that looks like is a collection of tools for both family and staff to utilize, to just make our processes more relevant and cohesive. Our students spend a lot of time not with us, right? And making sure that we can kind of carry those techniques and things we're doing into the home environment. Also vice versa, I think is really beneficial for making that effective education. We just rolled out a transition checklist for families and staff. What I mean by that is just, it's basically a list of things to consider for staff members that are transitioning students to a new grade level, but especially a new school. And then we are creating a communication for families as well to just let them know what we're considering in terms of that transition. Essentially, it's just recognizing what's working well for students in their current school or grade level and making sure that continues on. And then we are looking to plan future parent events, some feedback sessions for that resource library and things like that. I've been meeting with a state WISPE representative in March, which is the Wisconsin State Parent Educator Initiative. They do a lot of work on helping districts engage better with their families from a special education perspective, so I'm excited about that partnership. Any questions on family engagement?
This resource library, is that separate from what we already have?
Yeah, so.
Is this just elementary or is it?
No, it's gonna be K-12, so thank you for asking, cause I should have elaborated on more. It's gonna have things like IEP resources, right, like communication options, who you can go to for different things. But I'm also looking for it to be more academically driven too, things like homework helpers or executive functioning resources. Even like summer options of like different camps and things for students with disabilities. Cause that's a lot of feedback we get as well, especially this time of year that's been ramping up. So those are just some of the things that would be.
I guess my question is, where is the library?
It's not published to families yet, it's gonna be like a digital
Oh,
list
it's
of
online.
resources.
It's online.
Yeah,
Got it, okay.
So you put it in their website, or it'll just be like an email with a Google Doc with
we're gonna
links?
get it linked in the website, yeah. And yeah, I was just talking to someone about that today, it's like, right, how do we make sure that it continuously lives, that we're refreshing it, that parents know about it, that families know about it, and we're kind of keeping it at the forefront.
And it's a lot easier to use social media to promote awareness and
Yeah.
then link back to a single page within the webpage, so,
Absolutely.
great job.
And then just my last update, teacher support. Our coaching cycles for teachers are going really well, so 100% of our first and second year special education teachers in the district are receiving that consistent coaching, so you can kind of see the breakdown in the bullet points of the different types of newer teachers we have. We have teachers with experience that are new to the district, but we're still making sure we provide them with that 1 to 2 time per month of coaching from one of our program support teachers or myself. We had 3 special ed teachers who were new to our district last year, new to the field last year, that are still getting that coaching, just to make sure that they're still able to professionally develop. And then we have 1 first year special education teacher this year receiving that coaching weekly. We have 1 teacher that's actually working in a cohort with CISA, which is free of cost, as part of like a state grant for teacher induction. That's definitely something we would like to expand upon, cause it seems to be going pretty well, but you know, it's always a challenge of being after hours, being in Pewaukee, so we're talking to CISA about some like different options and things we can offer. So nothing concrete there, but definitely something that we want to explore.
How does your staffing model look coming out of this year and do you forecast for next year?
That's a great question, so that is my next point. Definitely something on my mind, so.
It's not a plant.
Right, yeah, we talked about that. So currently our staffing ratios do look good. I feel like staff are able to meet the needs of students and it is comparable to other districts in our area. We have about the same number of evaluations at this point of the year that we did at this time last year. So I think we've had 106 evaluations this year, it was 103 last year. Let me see, 66 qualified last year, 66 qualified this year, 59 qualified last year, but we've had a higher percentage of students qualified in speech and language this year. So we're at about the same. The trend's been the same too, it's mostly like students with a speech and language impairment or students with another health impairment or students with autism. So that's also something that we're kind of looking into is what are better ways that we can support those students, reactively and proactively as well.
Sure.
So the staffing for next year with those evaluation numbers is something that I'm starting to dig into at this time.
And is it too early to know kind of who the returning staff is and what your situation is going into fall or not yet?
Yeah, it's, the contracts, we have some deadlines, so staffing, Alec has been tied in with Leah and Caitlin and myself with the staffing timeline, we're coming into it right now. So things will start to move a lot more quickly after this board meeting, and in terms of contract deadlines for teachers, it's April or the end of April for contract deadlines, so we have certain statutory deadlines that we're working on with that. But we've had regular discussions with Alec, as recent as last week and then several weeks ago, as we've sort of looked at the start of our staffing cycle, but in talking to Leah as recently as today, we're gearing up, we're ready to start moving on the overall district staffing plan for 25-26.
And do we see it stabilizing, just as I know that, there's been some turnover in recent years?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see, we're hopeful. I think a lot of the things that he's put into place in terms of the 1 and 2 year mentoring programs, one of the areas that statistically nationally, it's more difficult for special education teachers to stay engaged for the long term, that's a national statistic, like 5 to 6 years, so I think that work at the upfront is important in order to make it a short term commitment, a long term commitment, so kudos to Alec for that and for the team, but things look good right now but it is early, we'll know a lot more in the next 2 to 3 board meetings.
One of the nice things is we just got word this morning that the middle school sectioning is done. That's like 3 weeks early. So that's been a big help too, because once we balance out those numbers, then we can actually shift towards special ed and start looking at some of the focal points there too. So that was just this morning we got that done. And I know the elementary's in a good spot, or the high school's in a good spot. So I think we're ahead of the game for sectioning. Which that'll lend itself so that we can get those out there if we have any this year. We get them up there.
Yeah, high school is substantially ahead, we already have a lot of that information in, and have already made some pre-decisions with Mr. Gebauer. And I know he's meeting with his teams and his building leadership teams and the structures that he has in place, so we're feeling pretty confident. Like I said, it's still pre-staffing because we have some statutory deadlines with teachers in April and later April. So the next several board meetings will be pretty active with staffing.
Well, thanks for all your rigor and processes and addition that you've brought forth, so this is benefiting our teachers as well as our students and families, so thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And good luck.
Sorry, I'm this.
You already know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Those that didn't know, Mr. Gus is expecting his first child coming up. And we're anticipating that it's going to be on March 3rd.
Yeah.
Some different anticipations.
Student support service committee meeting.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
So
Yes,
congratulations
we're very
on
excited,
that too, Al.
yeah.
So, that's exciting. Alright, moving on to attendance and discipline, so, who, do you have an intro, Dan, that you want
Yep,
to
so I'll
kind
get
of
us
jump right in
rolling.
there and
Yep, I'm gonna pull us back up on the screen here.
walk everything through? It's a lot of information, which is
Yeah,
great.
a lot of good stuff, but
Yeah,
there's a lot of spotlights, there's a lot of things that the group that's sitting here with us tonight is responsible for and is part of. As we brought forward a lot of information for you tonight. So this is gonna be part of a new process that we had rolled out in our annual calendar where we're gonna have an attendance behavior mid-year update. And this is the month that we had planned on doing it, and
Here we are.
we've got everybody, we're grateful we got everybody here tonight, so that worked out very well. So to start with, this is actually a little graphic that our esteemed colleague, Mr. Mogi here, has put together that we focus kind of on we used to call it the three-legged stool when it comes to behavior, attendance, and really academics for kids. The interventions are also the part that we're gonna be looking at, and you're gonna see some of the things that are put in place by the group that's with us, along with the principals of the building, and really along with the whole administrative team and the staff in the district. So as we go through this, it's really an approach that you've heard me say a lot this year, and David and I have talked about it, probably ad nauseum, that we're really looking at systematic approaches in pretty much everything we do. They don't have to be identical from K-12, but they're approaches that we know work, so we wanna do what we can to keep them stable from the time of the kids in kindergarten to the time they graduate from high school. And that's really what we're looking at from a structure standpoint that we put in place this year. So we're gonna start with really what's gonna be on the main presentation for tonight. One of the first things that you're gonna see building by building is the attendance rate. This is an actual pie chart that we have in PowerSchool from the year 23-24, so last year compared to this year, 24-25. There's some key components there that I do have to point out as we get into those from a district standpoint, but you're also gonna see from a building standpoint, they utilize those pie charts differently. Some of them are gonna look at it from an apples to apples standpoint, from a semester to semester. Some of them are gonna look at year-long data, and they're gonna do the same thing from a behavioral standpoint too. This is different than what you'll see in the report card, and this is also different than data we've looked at in the past, because in the past, we've looked at whether we have a certain percentage of students reaching the crescendo of 90% or not. The school report cards that you see that the state puts out are based upon a year or two old data. And I like to describe it as, we're not looking at an autopsy report, we're actually looking at physical therapy when we start looking at the pie chart the way we are. We're looking at things that we can do now, today, on an instant snapshot, where we can see where we're at and we know we can adjust to make better improvements on it. Whereas the report card is from 21-22, this is from today, last week, and even from the school year we're tracking. The next part of the presentation that you're gonna see is gonna be behavior. And I'm gonna kind of mirror what I do from a district standpoint to what they're gonna be doing at the building standpoint. We're gonna compare the in-school suspension rate for 23-24 and 24-25, and again, this is from PowerSchool Direct. And then we're gonna look at the out-of-school suspension rate for 23-24, and we're gonna compare that with this year so far. When I look at mine, I'm looking at the full year of 23-24, and then we're looking at the semester, or actually up to February 10th of where we've been so far this year. So we're gonna kind of talk through what that data looks like as an estimate versus theirs, which is pinpointed by semester. We're also gonna be breaking down the behavior by subtype. It's gonna be a little hairy to see on our charts, but really it's a process that we're using versus the majors and minors, which we've talked about extensively so far this year. This is gonna be shifting away from that so we can pinpoint what are the things we really wanna work on. And again, from 23-24 to 24-25. And ultimately, what are we looking at? What does the data show? And then ultimately for each building level, it's gonna be what are the next steps? So where are we at? Where are we going? And how has it gone so far is really what the whole gist of this presentation is. So from a behavior standpoint as a district, when you look at this, and I do it by days, and you can do it by days, you can do it by raw numbers, and most of the ones we did from a building standpoint are raw numbers. But this will give you an idea of what their raw numbers equates to. In-school suspension last year, for the entire year, there's 116.5 days. Out-of-school suspension, and this is the number that's gonna be a big shift that you're gonna see on here. We had 388 days out-of-school suspension. This year so far, up until February 10th, we've had 45 days of in-school suspension, and we've had 128.5 days of out-of-school suspension. So as you look at this, if we were, let's say we're a little more than half, but if we were to double our current out-of-school suspension rate, we'd be about 257. So even with that, we're about 133 days less of out-of-school suspension.
That is wonderful.
And you know, one of the things we keep saying, in 90 days for in-school suspension. This is a direct result, not so much of like different things we've changed, anything like that, but it's the people that are in this room and in the buildings, building relationships with those kids. You know, being that adult in the building they can trust, listen to, they're gonna respect, they're gonna follow what they want them to do, because they want them, you know, they wanna impress them as the people in the building. So when you start looking at how that actually broke down by grade, got a chart, and this was also in the presentation too. We broke these down also by subtype. We didn't call them majors and minors, although we did qualify them as that in the PowerSchool. And you do have this available on that presentation too. But when you look at this is an actual breakdown by grade level, but it's also a breakdown by specific behavior subtype. What this does, and you're gonna see this when they bring up their actual graphs, is it helps pinpoint this very quickly where there's an issue that needs to get worked out. And I'm gonna just show this school suspension one here. So for example, if you're looking at a grade level and all of a sudden you start seeing a whole lot of stuff at the middle school level or at the high school level or even at the elementary school level, it's gonna cause you to pay more attention to it. In this case here, this is a single incident, that's not really do it. This one right here is a total number of days, so we had alcohol possession in 11th grade, we had 3 of those different things. That's something the high school is just gonna wanna be aware of, so they can say, this is something I need to keep an eye on if this is starting to be an issue. But if you look at it from a district standpoint, I'm gonna go up. Last year, there was a total of 11 incidents ranging anywhere from middle school to high school. That's gonna be substantially enough where we're gonna pay attention to it a little bit more and maybe put in some sort of conversations or some sort of actions in place at a school level where we're gonna address those things. You also notice that this year here, we've had 14 and a half days for drug possession. What happens, the high school is aware of this, and all of a sudden, we start doing things a little bit differently in what we're looking for when we're dealing with students. We're gonna pay a little bit closer attention to what's happening in our conversations. Again, these are not raw numbers, these are total days, so this is probably gonna equate to about, I guess, 3, 4 at the time we did this in February. So again, this is the type of data that we break down. The thing that you have to be cautious with, when you break it down like this, is it looks like there are a whole lot of things behaviorally that are going on. That's one of the reasons why I focus more on that chart that I had the first time. This right here, and I could speak from a lot of years of experience, and I know that there's other people in the room that would echo the same thing. If you just look at the page number alone compared to last year, this is not a result of people not doing their job. This is a result of a lot of people doing a lot of different jobs and taking care of it. Just by the page value alone, if you just, again, looking at it from a visual standpoint, we stopped our year so far way up here with that many days. So just gonna keep that stuff in mind when we're going through the slides, because you're gonna see the slides and they're gonna have some images on there. You're like, holy cow, that's a lot of behavioral incidents for this one particular subtype. But then what we're doing is we're narrowing down what we want to work on. It'll become real apparent once you see the graphs that we utilize. Okay, so from an attendance standpoint, and this is, like I said, this is our physical therapy version of what we do on a daily basis. This is ADA, which is average daily attendance. So for the year 23-24, we actually were running about 95% for the entire year. Currently this year, we're running about 95% for average daily attendance. The difference between this and what's reported in the school report card is that's based upon that rotation of what are the 90% percentiles that we're looking at. How many of our kids meet that 90% criteria? And that's from 2 years ago. So it's not a very useful tool, but it is something that's evaluative because that's what we measure that compared to other schools, other school districts. This is what we use on a daily basis that we can utilize quickly, rapidly, and we can say, here's what we need to do differently. And actually, I think you're gonna see on a couple of the slides what happens when we have a week of a lot of sick kids. And we've got that for a demonstration of it too. Okay, any questions so far on the district level before I hand it over to Tanya?
Go ahead.
Amber just said nice work.
And I did the math too on the, those numbers are definitely on the way down, so
Yeah.
it says that we're doing a lot of things, right?
Putting a lot of different things in place before it gets to the.
But you even notice it in the conversations with people where behavior and disruption throughout the day used to dominate the conversations that I would participate in. Don't have those anymore. Those calls and inquiries aren't happening. And that's a kudo to the staff and the leadership teams in our school that are there every single day. So if you guys don't do what you do, then we hear about it and thank you for doing what you do so that people's minds are at ease. So thank you.
Well, and part of this too, and again, this is kind of a back and forth here of positive stuff, because we were able to add 2 staff members to our administrative crew at the building level. We were able to increase the capacity not only of the people that were already in place doing it, but also by we can allow for our other instructors, our other administrators to become instructional leaders more than what we are the behavioral managers. So that's also kudos back to the board on that too. And not to forget that John is also new, but he was another staff that we added this year too, but ultimately we added 2 FTE for us too. So the crew that we've got right here are a phenomenal administrative team. David and I have talked about this many times, how very fortunate we feel every day that we get to work with our APs, our principals, and the rest of the administrators in the district. But these guys right here are the ones on the ground working the relationships, handling the consequences, dealing with the families, and they're really building those strong connections to make this all go better. That's really what it boils down to.
So is it a fair, and I believe it is a fair characterization, but I just wanna get that out there, that we have less discipline incidents in terms of ISS and OSS this year than last year, and attendance is better this year than it was last year, as a general rule.
As a general rule.
And it's mid-year, it's February, we still need to get through spring break.
Yeah, I get spring break.
This is that period of time, anybody here who's worked in schools, that we're gonna need to push hard, between now and break, and then obviously after. So that's good, I mean, this is a celebration, so let's jump into that, understanding that there's always work to do, right? There's gonna be those blips and areas of focus and all that sort of thing. But those systems are there for us to focus on those blips and making sure that they're less next year.
And we've got the team in place right now to do that,
But the
continue.
kudos here is, this is a leap in terms of a change, it's not incremental, and I guess that's the part that I'd love to call out, and recognize the fact that it's a sizable improvement, so thank you.
We're excited about this, so
Yeah.
go ahead.
For sure. Tanya, I'm gonna hand it to you, Ms. Brenner from Shady Lane and Value.
So Tanya, I'm WAP at Shady Lane and Valley. We're going to talk about attendance and behavior, some changes, and then we'll start with some data, and then we'll go into our reasoning, what we were doing, and what we're going to be doing.
You guys, you gotta tell me when to click.
So our vision at Shady Lane is, or at Valley View, sorry, is to be responsible, be respectful, and be safe. And then our vision is we say this every day to the kids in the announcements, but also throughout our day at Shady Lane as well. Be safe, be kind, and do your job. We have lots of opportunities for students to get involved. As you can see, some of the peer ambassadors and leaders. We have the bike rodeo, we have mentors coming in from the high school and then the police department. We partner with the middle school and the high school to have students come over for different activities throughout the year as well. And when we have Super Bowls, we partner with them, or we donate to the Miami Falls Food Pantry, and we have many after-school programs for our children. Really great kids. And then for our family and our parent opportunities, obviously volunteering in schools. We have an amazing turnout of volunteers. Families are just so willing to come in, it's really refreshing to see that. We have a family night, we have our intergenerational day, which is held with grandparents. Kind of a sweet moment where the grandparents get to come in and then they mostly leave with the kids at the end of the day and take them out to lunch and just spend time with like their grandchildren. That's really nice. We have a science night, we have our English language book night, I think that's part of the high school. And then our PTO is also amazing, there's lots of opportunities for parents to get involved that way. And then lots of combined opportunities like our talent show, our concerts, our career board, and then a lot of videos and pictures that we share on the district site as well as our own personal sites. And then we have the Hero Run and Hoopa Palooza. So we have a lot of opportunities. This is just some of the many opportunities that we have. And then this is on the top left is the career wall. So we invite families to send their pictures in with a little blurb about what they do and get kids excited. They walk through that wall and they usually stand there around lunchtime waiting to get in the lunchroom. And they talk about like, oh, that's my parent, or that person was, I want to do that when I'm older. And it's just a great way to look up to something and have that hope and inspiration. And then bottom there is one example of one of our bulletin boards. This is actually all the leaves are student names of books that they've read, and they bring them in and then we put them on the board and they love looking for their names all around them, and it's just a great way, and we do it every month. It changes, it's just nice to see that involvement, and kids can get involved as well. And then we're gonna go into some data. So our attendance at Shady Lane is actually pretty great in both schools. We were at 95% last year and this year as well. I did want to show on the bottom there is a snapshot of just the last few weeks, and it's down 2% because kids get really sick. And actually this year we have sometimes 7 kids out at a time in a classroom. I rode the bus the other day with a child, and there was like half the bus was gone, so it just happens. But overall, we're doing really well with our attendance at Shady Lane. We want to shoot for 90%, and we're at 95. And then for our Valley View, it's the same, sorry,
There we go.
it's the same, it's actually exactly the same, but it's from a different, it's Valley View's data, but it's exactly the same as Shady Lane, and we have a lot of the same, their families living together, and the kids get sick, and then one of them gets sick, and it's kind of just travels with the family, you know what, so it's, but again, our attendance is amazing at Valley View as well. We have a lot of things and supports in place that I'm gonna be talking about in just a moment. And then, yep. Alright, so then we were looking at our data overall, and for, we have an AM and a PM. PM that we take attendance, and many of our students, you can see it was a lot higher last year than it is this year. We have a lot of supports in place for that to increase getting kids to school on time. It's a little bit more difficult when they're elementary because they don't drive themselves to school. They don't obviously wake up sometimes by themselves either, their parents, they rely on their families. But we are working with their families, and I'll talk about ways that we do that as well. Alright, so the systems that we have in place already, we do a lot of positive interactions, a lot of the connections that we're building with our students and with our families. We're very communicative and collaborative with everybody. Our goal team works together to establish, you know, the needs of the students that aren't getting to school on time. We were inviting parents, we're making phone calls. Even at the beginning of the year, we made phone calls to parents that had, or families that didn't have great attendance last year and they're having great attendance this year. Like, great job, you know, what are you doing so that we can know and to keep your kid here at school, just like that encouragement to keep up the great work. But then there's that flip side where we also have to have that intervention. That means clear is kind, so clear messages to guardians of what's expected. And then our daily and our weekly messages, the attendance on our daily announcements at school. We also have a lot of meetings with guardians if there is a problem with attendance that we see coming up. And then a lot of celebrations too. We do a recognition, so monthly attendance awards, and actually our peer ambassadors at Valley hand those awards out, and they give, we have night cash, and then we have the same thing at Shady, but it's really nice to get that certificate, and then they hang it in their room or about their door, and then that positive message home that I talked about before.
I know something new at Valley View, just wanna reference it, I'm at Valley View tomorrow, but boards with percent
Yep,
attendance by
it's coming, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
alright, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but thank you for mentioning that.
Thanks for teasing.
I didn't look ahead, sorry.
There's pictures at the end, but yes,
Alright,
we
go
do,
right
they have
ahead.
attendance boards, and actually the students track it, so the teachers put it on the board with percentage each day, and then we have our student ambassadors, they're actually a group that I'm in charge of, and they're really great students, and they track it with a Google form, and then we look it over together with the kids, with the fifth graders that are part of that group, and then they give the awards out like I was talking about before, but that's
Yeah.
something that Jenny has brought in this year.
I was an AP for multiple years ago, wish I would've thought of that, I thought that was a good idea.
Well, it is, and it gets the students excited, like, they're counted, they're there, and now you matter, right? You're in the classroom and,
The chore chart of what?
yeah, it's not like, it's a level of accountability, but it's excitement too, like, can we all be here tomorrow?
We're not focusing on 100%, it's the best attendance overall, because we always have that, maybe there's one student that, like, oh, the student, we can't get 100%, but it's overall the best attendance for that month. And I think that's important too. And then, our next steps. So, we're checking in more with those selected students, to see how they're doing, to see if they have that connection, just how they're doing overall, so that we can make sure that we want to keep them in school and coming to school on time. We have incentive programs for families and students both, and then a lot of the increased positive communication home, we're doing that more. Increased attendance check-ins with those targeted families, we meet monthly, and then we, with our attendance team, and then we reach out to families and we talk to students as well. And then we have the recognition awards that are becoming more frequent, and then we just signed up for an incentive for families that's going to be starting in March for the schools, where they'll get tickets for like nearly perfect attendance. And then, so it's tickets for the students, and then the family just has to purchase their tickets, and they can go to like a free baseball game. So that's really cool. The behaviors, so this is starting with Shady Lane, and overall, last year and this year, our highest behavior is personal physical contact. But when we're looking at that, that is students often play where they're, using their hands or feet, and we're trying to teach them other games to play, but it's a very broad range, like it could just be they push somebody, or they hit somebody, or they kick somebody, or we're tracking more data this year than we were last year, and I'll get to that as well. But overall, it's the personal physical contact in our lower elementary, because they're play fighting and it turns into more usually. Because they watch the games on TV, the video games, and they're play fighting in there, so we're really trying to enforce other games that they can play.
This is one of those visuals I mentioned before, when you start looking at it, it becomes very apparent what it is that you wanna work on. And just like Tanya was talking about, that big one there with that personal physical contact. And I won't be a spoiler here, but there's a good explanation why we're seeing what we're doing, and it's part to do with the processes we put in place this year.
And then for Valley View, our biggest one is inappropriate behavior. That is very broad. It can be anything, but overall it has gone down. Our students are just amazing in Menominee Falls, they really are. And again, we have interventions in place that we're doing already. We have great leaders in the schools that are stepping up. We have about 29 fifth graders that are seen, and they're making the announcements, they're making posters, they're doing a lot. We have a day coming up Thursday where they have a dress up day that they decided to make, and then it's gonna be for the school, so it's just getting them involved, and then the little ones look up to them, so it's really wonderful. And then our next one, so suspensions are down a lot. I think this comes from a combination of our partnership with our principal and our AP, working together to have those interventions with students that may have been suspended in the past. We wanna keep kids in school and learning, and that's because we are able to, if something comes up, we are able to address it immediately. Overall, the top two are Shady Lane and the bottom two are Valley View, but this year we had about two, for Shady Lane, and then we have 3, so it's gone down significantly more in our 3-5 grade level.
That's incredible.
I'm gonna show you one thing here too, and then I'll let it out. It's hard not to let the cat out of the bag here, but one of the theories we've always done when it comes to discipline is if you handle the little stuff, you won't have the big stuff. And this right here is proof of it, and part of the processes that she's gonna be talking about, the rest of them we're gonna be talking about, is we've structured a lot of this year. So in order to have this go down, you have to be able to address this, and we have the capacity now to address this a little bit better. And then we have capacities as administrators to handle it a little bit more. Okay, I'll shut up now.
Alright, so the systems in place, we do address things immediately. But we have trained staff to log entries, so our data looks a little bit higher because they're logging the teacher handle behaviors now. We just taught them how to do that at Shady Lane, and now it's a uniform process. So on the right there is a chart that we are using for our elementary, and it kind of guides with our middle and high school that you'll see later on in the slides. But we have a flow chart of what to do when the behavior comes up. So everybody has that chart in our schools, and then they know, when to call and when not to call the office, or what to do next in different situations. We also have a team dedicated to behavior data management. So they look at the data each month, and they are like, what can we do to make this better? What can we do to, if it's one problem? And I know that at one school we're working on just grade levels, like because each grade level has their own specific instances that are higher. And then clear and consistent consequences. I have a student mantra. We also have our matrix, a new matrix, so it's clear. We want to make sure that they understand what expectations are. We just review them over and over, and a lot of reteaching, especially for our younger students. Again, our peer ambassadors and our peer leaders. We have ambassadors in the 3-5, and we have leaders in the first and second grade for K through 2. But they also are aiding in those announcements, they are on the announcements, they're making them with me, I just take I make the slide, or even actually in Valley View, the students make the slides sometimes, and then they make the videos and we have them up there every day, I take pictures all the time, and so their families, they're seeing their pictures up there and they love it, they think that they're famous, you know, they do love it, they love looking at it, they love sharing it with all of their friends and their peers. But then school communication and having that pride, and I think that's really huge. Interventions are check-in, check-out systems, so we check in with students in the morning, we check out with students that may have tricky days or have situations where they can't handle their emotions or they can't handle their behavior throughout the day, and then we have check-ins in place during times that they may have had more incidents so that we can keep those down. Unscheduled breaks are really big for K2. Sometimes when we have a 4-year-old that comes into school and they aren't used to it, they need those scheduled breaks. We have them scheduled very specifically for their needs, so it can depend on the kid. It can be right in the morning, it can be in the middle, it could be 3 times. We had one student that needed an extra snack and they kind of now don't need that anymore, they're in their classroom at that time. It's just kind of getting them used to school. And then communication and collaboration. And we have positive office referrals that go on to our announcements, and then those office referrals, they also go home and it's written out, like what they're, you know, who did it, like who's the teacher that said it, the staff member, and then what they did with the characteristics, and that goes home then to their parents. We also have a lot of positive postcards home that are sent home just, you know, throughout our day. That's actually a goal that we are working on. And then we also just write them notes, like students' notes when we sit them in the classroom, they take it home. One student told me, I got some on my wall in my room. So like it's just little things that they like to be recognized for, like everybody does. And then these are some of our pictures, this late attendance board on the bottom right that Mr. Munoz was talking about. What we have on the left is our Shady Lane. We have a lot of reteaching, a lot of social stories. You know, what would I do if I was in this situation? Just because kids don't always know how to handle that. Or even just to set a goal. And then on the right is our matrix in the top right that I was talking about Valley View, with the respectful, responsible, safe, and clearly what it looks like in each area, the bathroom, the bus, you know, the lunchroom. We had a lot of problems in our lunchroom and recess, and so we've split up into 2 different groups for our lunch and recess to reduce those behavior problems. And then again, the positive office referral on the bottom, and then our attendance boards that are filled out daily and then tracked by our students.
Now that lunchroom change, that was, I mean, from last year to this year, that's a pretty dramatic change. I mean, I'm looking at Mrs. Hamilton because I know she was here last year, you know, this year, but I mean, that was a major structural change that's going very well.
Yeah, so splitting those, last year we had all grade levels in the cafeteria and out on the playground at once. It gets to be a lot, so we decided to split it up, see if we could decrease some of the challenges, and it's been a dream come true.
Right, I mean,
It's a dream come true.
Oh,
you
that's
know,
great.
I remember the last year to this year, and then I was there at the start of the year, and they're like, okay, we'll see. But then after a few months, you know, me being back there several times, and I know for many people, including, you know, Mrs. Tamlinson and others, that it's going very well, you know, the structural change.
I think that would be true of any building, right? If you're splitting kids in half, you're gonna have less challenges.
And it's also important to point out too that when you look at the log entry process that you guys utilized last year with the teachers, putting them in and then putting them in a PowerSchool along with the flow chart too, I think that was another way that you've done it, help structure what goes on about it too.
We also have a very flexible staff, so they're willing to, they're helping in the lunchroom and recess and getting our stuff up to do that as well. Did I do that one? Oh no, okay, sorry. Next steps for behavior. Strategy training, some more strategies for the teachers on how to help students in the classroom. We also have grade level targeted collaboration around behaviors. And then we have a de-escalation training for our aides that they know how to be doing. And then increasing those positive communication home. That is a goal for our school. We wanna make sure that everybody receives at least one, if not more, things home, their families can see it, they're proud, just to know that, hey, you did a great job on this or that. And then positive self-talk, that is also a big thing. We know, we believe what we talk to ourselves about, and just increasing that positive self-talk. Again, the celebrations that I talked about and those bulletin board posts that we have on our walls. Do you have any questions for Shailene about you?
Great work.
Yeah, and then you instruct students in between all of that.
Well, and it's amazing just to see the small, and I say small, and I know some of them are not small changes, but they also didn't cost money and they didn't have a budgetary, but you're getting the results that are desired, so thanks for being triers and just experimenting, and if something's not working, pivoting, so appreciate it.
Can tell a lot of hard work and thought has gone into it.
Alright, now we're gonna hand it over to Dave Peters for Ben Franklin, Riverside Elementary.
Alright, so obviously a lot of the things will be very similar at the elementary level. So I'll just try to highlight some of the pieces that are slightly different between Ben Franklin and Riverside versus Valley and Shady. So a few of the pieces that are similar but different, we have for Ben Franklin, be safe, be kind, and be a learner. Once again, that's one of those pieces that we announced within our announcements, the kids know it, and we speak about that piece, like how are you living those pieces. At Riverside, it's respectful, safe, and rocket ready. The big piece with that for students is recognizing like rocket ready kind of encompasses a lot of things. So what are you doing to be ready for the day, ready for your class, and different pieces like that. One of the big things that we have that is a little bit different is our family fun and food truck event. So that's just that community building event that we have. That is just a great way to bring Ben Franklin and Riverside together. Our students, our families, and even actually past students is kind of fun. To see them, they come visit, and I mean, they've aged, and they look way different than what I remember them like, Mr. Peters, and I'm like, yeah, and it takes a second, but then once I get it, you remember them, and so it's just a great way to build a community with, in our school. Another neat thing that we have is our pen pals with community members, and so that's a way that our students are branching out from just Riverside, and also it's a great connection with the community because it's some of our senior community members as well, so it plays a dual role for our kids getting that opportunity to connect with others, but also building that piece for the senior community members to have a touch point with somebody as well. Once again, we have the intergenerational day and a few others that are similar. Big thing that we have too is our PI, which is the PTO that's combined between Ben Franklin and Riverside. And just really highlighting that piece for them, that they really support our teachers in really whatever they need, whether it is through a financial need or just resources, time, and they just spoil us nicely as well, so it's much appreciated from our staff as well.
Out of curiosity, does Ben Franklin and Riverside do pupils as well or not?
So they used to do, it actually used to be Valley against Riverside
Oh.
a long time ago. When I taught at Valley View, we played against Riverside.
Yeah.
And then when the reconfiguration of the buildings happened and COVID, that kind of stopped, and so the idea is that the family fun and food truck is in place of that. Part of the basketball piece with it was the raffle baskets and things like that, and that's where the fundraising piece came in.
Okay.
And so we do that piece in the spring, so knock on wood, we've had pretty good weather most of the days, it's been just a great way to do it. We bring in food trucks from families within our small school community, but also the larger Menominee Falls community. The fire truck comes, so the kids get a kick about seeing the fire truck and all that. The principals get pied in the face during that one. Last year somehow I avoided it. It was like people were like, why wasn't your name in there? I said, nobody asked. So then they like noted like get David.
Right.
So I'm sure I'll get a little revenge.
Slip some extra
Right.
Especially with 2 schools of kids knowing me,
Right.
I'll get a double dose. But yeah, so that event is the similar version of it.
Special kudos to Riverside, Veterans Day. Your students and staff do just a wonderful job for the Veterans Day. I mean, the cards that are handed out, the attention to the veterans that are there, it's extremely well appreciated. And, you know, the fact that it occurs there and just well done with that.
Yeah, and like echoing that piece, one of the parts that our 5th grade admirals get to do is each day the students are responsible for putting up the flag on our flagpole each day. And so it's just one of those kind of civic responsibility pieces that they recognize, and they actually take great care as they're doing it. And as they're trying to figure it out and they work together as a team to do it, so it's just another small moment, but a big moment for them to do it, and they get excited to have that piece. Once again, so here's just a few pictures from within our building. We have our career pictures as well, similar to Valley and Shady. And yeah, the kids, they get excited to see their parents there. It's also just really neat to highlight some of the different jobs that we have. It's crazy to see, like I stop and look at it a few times where I'm like, man, we have such a wide variety of people here, it's really cool. There's the bulletin board with our pen pals, our Rocket Ready, so that's actually one of our ceiling tiles that we have within the hallway. That's something that we did this school year, is switched out some of the ceiling tiles just as a different spot for the kids to kind of see different things around the building. And then the hearts are Valentine hearts from the parents that they wrote to their students. And so it's just a way to, once again, bring together the home and school connection. So for our attendance, I mean, you can see right there that overall it's pretty similar, a little bit better this year. And actually looking through the data, it was very similar dips that we had across the board, January and February here. And the big thing for us actually has been the staff piece of it for the attendance. It does mirror our students. I mean, when you're around all these little kids sneezing and snotting and all that stuff, they tend to get sick as well, but we've been able to manage that piece. And so that's been the really great part, is that we have some really very reliable subs that we've had, but also as a team, we work to cover that part as well. So this one is a unique one for us at Ben Franklin, our tardies. And so you look at it and you go, why is he presenting something that shows 360 already? Well, at Ben Franklin, historically we had an all-school recess, essentially, if you will, at the beginning of the school day. All of our kids were there from about 8:45 to 9 o'clock, 8:30 to 8:45. And then the bell rang and they all came in. And with that piece, there were students that were arriving at that 8:45 and they weren't necessarily getting in the line and things like that. So they truly were tardy, but they weren't marked tardy because of the way that our system was. And so we changed this actually after spring break last year. And it was a safety piece initially, but also the tardy part to just get the message like school starts at this time, because there was a wiggle room. And it's cute to see the little kids and they're playing and things like that, but it was safety, 600 kids, one playground, that's a lot. But then it also had the impact of tardies. Now we still have a higher number there, but those tardies, I mean, I do the parent drop off every day and I'll tell you, there's 10 kids at most that might come in and they trickle in like 2 minutes late, versus in the past they were 5-10 minutes late and they weren't necessarily always getting marked that way because of having the recess. By the time the class gets up there, that kid may have snuck in the door, didn't really sneak in, but for their class, they were able to get in without being marked. And so our number looks higher on track this year, but it's also because that's being marked at an earlier time because they're in the classrooms earlier
Kind
than
of
before.
that 389 should be higher if they were actually doing the same diligence with marching, correct?
Correct, well, and so the part is that the bell rings at 8:47, all the kids, 600 of them line up to get them all in the building. They weren't even walking into the building until 8:53. So we have all the kids in the building, they can start coming in at 8:30 and they're all in by 8:47. And then that's when they start getting marked absent, or not absent, but tardy at that point. So the time has changed, so the number looks different, but it had a different implication.
It's an apples and oranges thing.
Correct, yep, it's a different thing, and like I said, it's been the safety piece, like we just don't have the kids running into each other. I mean, 600, they ran into, we had unfortunately an incident last year where a student had to get stitches, but it was an accident, but it was kids all trying to play on the same thing, and that's gonna happen when you have more kids there. So reducing that piece, and the kids also come into the building a lot more calm. It's a transitional period, and they're able to start their day truly, bell rings, we do announcements, and we go, versus, all right, now you calm down after this really exciting morning that you just had, that kind of piece, so. Similar practice, obviously we have the same families, for the most part between Ben Franklin and Riverside, so we're right along there, for our attendance pieces, with 94 and 95% of our students. One thing I wanna highlight here that's similar, but just also just highlighting that piece, so when we look at the attendance, if we're showing raw numbers here, but one of the boxes there on that diagram, talks about the decide next steps. And so with that piece, that's when myself, our admin assistant, and our school social worker, we meet and we dive into what the numbers are. And so really looking to figure out the story behind why is this student missing 12 days so far? their family went on vacation in September for 5 days, they got hit by the flu bug here, and like those different things, so looking deeper in at what the numbers are. And so that's where we have the path, but it's almost like a choose your own adventure a little bit, that we have wiggle room for it. We send out the communication still, but it allows us to have that piece of handling each situation with its own merit. The big thing with this is also the fostering the positive interactions and connections. I put connections at the door for that. Actually in an attendance meeting last week, one of the parents we were talking about it, and it's a kid who just struggles in the morning and is anxious about school and things like that. And she said that he actually is excited because he sees Mr. Gofford and myself in the morning, and like I say hi to him every day and whatnot, but I didn't realize that he actually highlighted to his mom like, well, no, I like school and I like seeing Mr. Peters, I like seeing Mr. Gofford in the morning, but knowing that piece, if I didn't have that meeting with the parent, I never would have known that. So building those connections and highlighting that piece. One thing for that is like Mr. Walter at Riverside every day comes in and greets all the classes before he does announcements, and so just a quick morning to everybody, and it's a way to welcome them and let them know that they care, or that we care and that they matter. A few pieces that we also have is just some of our, like I said, the attendance meetings with the families and having those pieces, but also to really dig in with some of the families. If we need to, we do home visits as well, just to really get to know them more and see what supports do they need. Because as Tanya had mentioned, our kids aren't driving themselves to school, so we want to know and dig in, what can we do to help? Is it a breakfast thing? If they need breakfast in the morning, that's the delay. We got breakfast at school, that we can find those ways. And sometimes it's a quick fix like that as well, so that's nice. Alright, so for our behaviors, once again, so you can see, the labels there, but we had specific ones on the top for the 23-24. We had fighting, which was our 24, inappropriate behavior, that was that all-encompassing one that we had, that was at 20, and that peer physical contact, which was at 26 for our students from last year. And then this year, our numbers, it's hard to tell, but once again with the graphs, but we're down across the board with those overall. Fighting was our one on the left that's a little bit spiked at 15, and then mean moment is at 31. And one of the reasons why we've been kind of classifying more of ours with that mean moment was the follow-up conversations that we have with students and digging into the why and the what happened with it, so that we can do the coaching piece to address the behaviors, so we can hopefully address it and change it for going forward.
Secondary feedback. There was a chuckle.
I'm going. One thing that I'll just highlight, so once again, you can see the numbers, they've gone down. A big thing that we can also do besides just breaking these charts down by kind or subtype is breaking it down by time of day. And so similar to what Tanya had said, by breaking it down by time of day or location and things like that, we can track that behavior. Similar to what Dan said, instead of doing the autopsy of it, of like, oh, it already happened, what are we gonna do? We can actually address it now and go, oh, okay, we have more behaviors, obviously at recess and at lunch. And actually today I was looking into it a little further, and we had like almost next to nothing, knock on wood, for the first 4 hours of the day at Ben Franklin and at Riverside, but then lunch hits and it spikes, which you naturally would expect. But we do give more behaviors, or not behaviors, breaks for the behaviors and address those things in the afternoon. So we are responding to those pieces when the kids need it. They're very little, they're young, it takes a bit.
Yeah.
And lastly, a big thing here for us is the drop in the suspensions that we had. Last year at Ben Franklin, we had a total of 26, Riverside had a total of 31, we're down to 12 and 7. And once again, we are past the 100th day of school, just ask the kindergartners, that we had that last week. And so we're well more than halfway, and we have less than half. And actually looking into it deeper, the Ben Franklin one, 10 out of the 12 were actually from September and October. And so similar to what we said, addressing the pieces that needed to be addressed, and we've had 2 since then. So that, I mean, we had the 3-4 months after that, and only 2 of our suspensions during that time. Riverside, they're still split between the months and things like that, but it's definitely still a marked drop in that. Well, there you go, middle high school. Any questions, actually, sorry.
So much to be proud of. I mean, I know Ben Franklin specifically has a storied past with some, inconsistencies around behavior, so a lot of attention to detail to be able to turn that around, stabilize, not only for the teachers and the students and families as well, so thank you very much.
One, and even with the families, like one of the big things is now when they get the phone call, almost every single person, instead of like bucking you on it, it's like, thank you for letting me know, and it's that collaboration between us and them, and I make sure to say thank you to them, and like we truly appreciate that connection, that support, and that's why it takes a village for us to really support these kids, so it's.
One comment I wanna make is that I'm proud of all the administrators here. Of the 10 administrators that are here right now, myself included in that 10, only 4 of us were in the same position last year. You know, myself, you know, Jenny, Christina, Dave. So, I mean, there's a lot of big movement going on, and when I was going about reducing, you know, central office staff in order to move things into the district, this is what it looks like, and this is the vision coming out. So I really appreciate all of you. Those are long-term decisions, and you know, we're still doing a little bit of adjustments, but we'll come into staffing. But just to the board members here and those listening online, this is what that move looks like, you know, in terms of like all the administrators sitting here, the 10 of us that are administrators.
And then the numbers that follow that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's just, you know, obviously there's work to do. I mean, there's here and there and there's adjustments to do, and like any administrator here, they're gonna tell you this, that yep, there's some good things there, but we need to do this, and that. And that's great. I mean, that's what we're here to do. Just like a teacher, you teach a class and you're like, oh, my closure component wasn't great, or anticipatory sets, or whatever. There's always something you wanna improve. So just thank you to everybody here. It's a great report so far. Let's move on to middle school.
Which I think actually was a really good segue, because no, the reason why I say that is this, is that, sorry.
He said
I
that,
don't, I didn't mean to compliment you like that. But being, both myself and Russ being new as well, I think one, like, interesting thing is that we're new, but we're not new, which means when we attack these things as well, you're getting 20-some plus years of, okay, it's 30, let's figure this out. You know what I mean? So it's really a good segue. We are new and we're learning, so I think it.
But it's a testament to the adaptability of this too, to go from where they're at to strategic and operations, really is what it boils down to. And to be able to do that within I mean, you're talking 3-month timeframe here. That this whole crew, along with the principals in the building, are able to turn that ship that fast.
But again, I think we all believe it's the tone that's set at the top, and I think it was brought up in the fact that, hey, September and October, you get a plethora of opportunities to be able to set the right tone. And it's clear that we're focusing on education, we're focusing on safety, we're focusing on all the right things that are proving success. So the exciting part is while we're working on all of this, what we're hoping that attributes to is better engaged scores later on down the road. So we see how the pieces come together, and it's just very refreshing to be able to have this kind of conversation with the talent in this room, so.
I'm really happy you said that, because as you're looking through this, it's all of it's connected.
Of course it is.
It truly is. I know we all know that, but I think, you know, addressing it, like, if this, then this, and I think, because we're looking at this is what we have, we're gonna show you, okay, this is what this is how we're seeing it, to try for the bigger picture, which is be a better experience for kids, so nonetheless, I digress. So as we kind of have started this, and jump in here whenever too, is we somewhat of a process, I guess. You don't wanna waltz into a situation and just wreck like we're doing, you know, gathering. I think coaching has a little bit to do with it too. Being coaches, it's like, okay, let's figure out what we have here. So I think we kind of follow these processes, and that will follow throughout the whole thing, where you look, gather and analyze some of the, I guess we'll focus just on attendance and behavior today, right? Just let's see what it was. And then we learned in August that the staff had a perception survey, so we want to take into account what they saw, which is very important. School culture became apparent from anywhere we look. That includes the students, which we learned real quick with that, and they came to us, and I'll explain that later too. But we still have weekly attendance and behavior meetings with our teams, where we look at Power School, we analyze it within our teams, we figure out plans of attack, we look for hot spots, we do a lot of these different types of things, kind of setting up game plans before we kind of go after stuff, not just randomly throwing darts at the wall. But I think that C is enormous, and I know we both pride ourselves on this, is building relationships with all the stakeholders, not just the kids.
Yeah, I can say that, you know, kind of starting out the school year, Tony, Terry and I, we met a lot to talk about just like Tony's really great at looking at data. And so we did a lot of good job of like digging into data and saying like, these are the issues we really wanna focus on this year. And I think actually we had that Big Rocks conversation or PowerPoints. And so from there, we kind of started really, between the two of us, we have about 45 years of experience in education, and Terry as well, add on to that, so really like, okay, like, yeah, I know, right, so, because our gray hair doesn't do that. So, but just kind of like what in our different, because we've been everywhere from elementary to high school between the two of us, and so what in our experience has worked and not worked, and kind of setting up some systems and plans. And some of it too is just real simple stuff, and I actually wanna go to the next slide. Looking at our attendance here, we look at that, one of the first things that we hit on was how do we start, getting kids here and also getting these unexcused tardies down, which we have, we've had about almost a 20% reduction already in that. And one of the biggest pieces I can say to that, and I know Tony, he's done a good job with this, and myself as well, is just really kind of we have bi-weekly attendance meetings, and then we meet with families to get them in and see, because it's a different story from every family of, is it something to do with parent and kind of some of that coaching, or is it just a kid that really needs to kind of get inspired to come to school a little bit more, and what's the thing that's gonna inspire him to come to school? I just had a meeting this week with a student who is gonna be a great entrepreneur, but really isn't digging school yet, and so we kind of figure out some ways to get him connected into school, and we have a really good, I can't think of the name of our club,
FBLA.
So he's gonna
Mr.
get
Max.
involved in that, and now he's,
I'll be with them next week.
yeah, and so just a lot of just ideas like that where it's really trying to get kids connected.
I think, David, you had a point too, it's like the why, when you were speaking about attendance, off of that too, it's when we have these meetings as well. It's not just about get to school, it's connecting it now to the high school and getting people to understand the relationship between attendance, grades, and, I have to take English 9 again when I'm a junior with a bunch of freshmen. That wakes kids up. They're, oh, really? Yeah. So it's making it real as opposed to just throwing the law book out and say, this is what we have to do. So it's trying to make it real for them as well, but really, I think a lot that has improved, and you see the little bit of it went from 96 to 95, and that I'd say was absences, and there's a couple extenuating circumstances I could talk about, but I mean, it's pretty equivalent.
When your bus comes at 6:35 in the morning.
No comment,
It's early.
but it's good for me, I'm a morning guy, it's great, but no, it's difficult, and you hear that often.
You see in my neighborhood, I see the light at 6:20.
Yep.
The sun's coming out now.
I'm really happy that it's, the sun's out now.
The sun's coming out now.
Directing traffic in the.
Yeah.
I'm up,
Ready to-
I'm up, I'm drinking my coffee, going.
So it doesn't bother me none. So I guess, this was just highlight, we took the information, this is from the staff. So when we met with the staff in the beginning of the year, realistically, the arrows will indicate, okay, in the staff world, cell phones, hallway behaviors, and bringing materials to class. Quite honestly, the materials to class you could strike, because we could have that discussion in 1972, we can have, it doesn't matter, that we always are harping on that. But I guess hallway behaviors and phones, and then school culture permeated, so, and you look at the bottom with classroom management, but that was not a priority in their world. I think it's, it's important to value what they see, because our staff, speak for you, our staff is awesome. They really are, they already have, like a lot of things are established, power school, entering things, that already exists, parent contact, so I guess we're blessed in that way that they're already doing it, we have our discipline cycle already, so a lot of these things do exist, but, and then knowing that, okay, let's look at what, I guess, we could have pinpointed 10 things. Let's look at really, there's somewhere for us to start.
Right.
As a starting point, right?
Mhm.
So that's kind of what, we'll kind of, come through in the presentations, focusing on these areas.
Next slide there. So some of the things that, we've noticed here, and kind of the theme of tonight is just that big drop. And that's really a byproduct of our staff and being, we've had some whole staff meetings and then just individual conversations of being consistent, having consistent and clear expectations and forming relationships with kids. And, if you have a student that's continually ringing the phone, the why, and having them do that as well, right? And so with all those things, and we have staff that are really, really great at building relationships at North Middle School. So you've seen this really substantial drop from the beginning of the school year.
And just so you know, the data, the numbers on most of these are semester one comparable 2 years.
Okay.
So kind of keeping the same time frame, just, you know, as we're digging through it, you can see, oh, if we do this, so what if we do this? You're gonna be here forever, you know, really,
Sure.
but those are the numbers, and you know, one thing that we had heard earlier was the phone stuff, coming from a couple other places, the phones here are minor. My daughters are still texting me in the middle of the day in the middle of class as students, you know what I'm saying? So phone issues are pretty.
I can say from the
pretty-
schools I came with, the phone issue was probably the biggest issue that we had. And at the middle school, our staff are great and they're consistent with it, and for me, I love it because that was one of the, as an administrator at a different school, that was one of the biggest things I was dealing with.
I know that the high
Huge
school
for classroom.
adopted the new cell phone policy this year. Is North following the same policy, getting students ready?
Ours are,
Which is,
they
you just
walk
don't
in,
have them
it's
on at
off,
all.
they
Yeah.
turn it, they leave school, it's on.
Yep, and it's, like we've had 25 violations, so I mean,
Nice.
it's been, it's part of our culture now.
They're really good about it.
It sets them up for success when they go to high school, so.
It's the goal, K-12 approach, right?
Getting ready for what's
That's the goal.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting ready.
So this
Yeah.
data, Dan yelled at me because I was getting too fancy and too articulate with it. So I got yelled at, but I guess really you're looking at hallway stuff, you're looking, I guess another thing we learned, it wasn't on the rocks in the beginning, is the physical stuff. That came to fruition that quick. The arrow is there, we have a decrease in the numbers, you'll see the purple arrow is taking personal physical contact and fighting in the top one, and then I guess the lingo changed to like fighting and we're looking into changing the lingo to make it a little bit more like concrete, this is this, you know, specific. But if realistically, the data below with hallway, with physical things like that, general misconduct, which you're going to get in middle school anyways, because they're middle schoolers, everything it's decreasing, which is really good to see.
You know, Tony brought this up too, as you look at the bottom of this, and really it's about having as many possible options as possible to identify it, this is too many. I mean, you're getting into the weeds of the weeds, and I think that's one of the things as we look at the levels, elementary and secondary, this part here is gonna get cleaned up. And it's really because now we're gonna be putting a lot of these options in the teacher's hands of what they're gonna identify as issues in the classroom. And because of that, we don't want them to have to sit and decipher a whole bunch of different foreign languages to what we're gonna code it as. This is what the kid did, boom, 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 log it, we get it, and then we deal with it. So that's gonna be a lot more simplified as we start moving through this process.
I can say-
Bring us back to that code of conduct.
Like looking at this too, you know, and this has been a great thing, working with another AP, is that we've been able to really get at things, kind of what Dan was talking about before, the little things that don't turn into big things. So we've really been able to get into those, get to know kids really well, and prevent those big things from happening, right? So that's one of the reasons you're seeing this, I think, this change in data, besides for some of the systems and stuff we're setting up, that you've seen that change.
Yeah, relationships are huge.
I think we've seen the data before, and we compared last year's activity between the high school and North, that North actually had more suspensions, which I think kind of surprised us all as a board to see that coming, because we know it's squirrely age, you know, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, but it's also a smaller population because it's only 3 grades versus 4, so it was interesting to see that, so again, thanks for your kudos to get
It's
your arms
middle
around
school,
that and bring it
yeah.
down, and
If you see the cohort breakdown, I ended up doing that too
Oh.
because it was bothering me, so see me later.
By
I can show it to you. I can
Sixth
show it to
grade
you.
versus seventh grade versus eighth,
Yeah.
it's a lot of detail breakdown.
No, there's a lot.
well, and there's some tricky classes in there, and
Yeah.
That's, you hit it on the head though.
yes, there was a class before one of my children graduated 8th grade, and the class president, probably still like legend, stood up there and put all those people on point before they became freshmen at the high school. I think they're still at the high school. I think the class is the junior class right now, so correlate as you will.
Yeah, and they really do, I mean, classes have their own
Mhm.
personality, as they come through the grades, you can follow it on their academics, but you can follow the behavior just as well, so. And then your handout too, that slide 36 was the comments that should have been there, but it'll also verify what Tony's talking about the arrow stars and label boxes that he mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
But you can ignore that
Owner.
behavior,
Ignore it.
slide 36.
So I guess to kind of put it all together, if you look in it's comparable to 23, 24 to 24, 25. And I made this a little bit more cleaner to see for all intents and purposes. Anything green is indicating it got better. If anything, from the number of incidences to the number of kids that have had just one incident. And I think the good one to really to see is that you look at students without incidents, you know, look at that number. I mean, you have a lot of kids
Thank you.
that don't have incidences or not even one. So keeping in mind, the last count or the last row is that Russ and I, there's 30, as we're talking about relationships, I guarantee you those 31 kids, everybody has relationships, not only with the kids, but with the families. And those are kids that are kind of moving up another level when we start dealing with things. It's about changing their behaviors, you know, so realistically, out of 809 kids, I think 770 of them are rock stars. You know, they really are, they're really doing the right thing, and that's a tribute to them, because this is middle school, and you're bound to get crooked any given moment. So I'm proud of that, seeing that in our kids.
And 30% just needed an election, 31 kids
Correct,
just
and
needed an
they're-
election, that's all.
And that's where, we're doing a lot of same things like elementary school, talking with the check-in, check-outs and lunches and stuff like that. Making those contact points, and even besides for us, because we're two people, there's a lot of teachers in the building and guidance counselors that we know certain kids will really hit off with, so making those connections with adults so that they feel that they have a place to go, and that really starts to take away some of those incidents as well, so.
Not to digress too far off of this, I think one thing that we had put in place this year that I think has made a major difference is that we have duty, we are everywhere, whenever we can be. And the visibility, whether it's, a lot of things happen at middle school, especially on structure time, recess, lunchroom, hallway, you know, all those type of things, right? Well, how do you stop you can't just stop their behavior, that's normal. But when they go, there's Logie, there's Tillman, oh, hey, you know, just little things like that you can do in a middle school way, like, hey, you just say it to them, they smile at you. But it carries over, but I think the visibility of a lot of us, and our teachers are awesome at it too.
Plus too, it's kind of like, you can kind of see when things are starting to get a little sideways, and you can kind of interject yourself and then de-escalate it or whatever, and then problem solve, and then go away, and it stops the big things from happening, so.
Did we add, are the new cameras installed at North yet, or is that still coming?
So we had some,
Yeah, they're installed as of last year, yeah, so
We have cameras.
So that helps as well.
they were last year, actually in both buildings, in both secondary buildings, there were no cameras in any stairwells, and that's done now, so there's cameras in all the stairwells now, on all the secondary buildings. We have some work to do in the elementary schools, we'll be doing that in earnest in spring break and in summer in order to finish the rest of that project. But in terms of the input of the new cameras in the secondary buildings, that is complete, with the understanding that we're always troubleshooting things here or there. We have some work to do at the elementary level in order to finish, and to have some enhancements like we've talked about. But all the principals have been dialed in with Mr. Halverson, in terms of those upgrades at the elementary level and also the secondary level.
Again, I just think that breeds accountability where you can't physically be where the eyes are. There are systems with eyes, and it takes a kid in one situation to learn that,
Just
and
a
then.
side note off of that too is, you can utilize those cameras as a teaching tool with kids. Come here, look. You tell me because perspective, middle school kids struggle with perspective. They really do, and that's a good teaching tool, is say, look at me, that sit there with the young man, I'm like, look, it wasn't me. Yeah, it was, you have a neon red sweatshirt on, it's you. But it's a teaching tool, so I think that's huge. Cameras are great, they're great.
That was a good slide that you had inserted, because I was having trouble reading this one just because of my eyes. You changed this slide out.
That one?
This slide right here to the one, to that one,
Correct.
it's the same data.
I was scared of changing anything, and Dan would have gotten a hold of me when it comes out.
I would have, that was a change,
That's a good slide,
That's a
it's a
good
good
slide.
visual.
No, it's just a visual, it just jumps out at you, and it's like.
Yeah, that's a good visual.
It's just cool to see, you know. The next one.
It's impressive.
I guess if you look at the suspensions, overall, in and out, same time frame. All right, you notice they're roughly similar, but what the interesting point with this is that physical, most of them had to do with physical. We were like almost a 40% decrease in any suspension related to the word physical. And I think that was a big thing they were telling us when we came in. It's like this kind of, okay,
It was a
well,
focus of ours
that was a
coming in, so
focus.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think you see a reduction of that, and what's interesting about it, because I thought of it as you guys were talking, is that if you look at the number this year for us, if there are physical ones, I think the difference is there's 23 physical ones in 23-24. I believe 14, don't hold me to this. Now, a lot of them are sixth grade, which totally proves what you guys were saying as well. You see a lot of that, so the transition, that's something we can build upon with the elementary, is like, all right, but you're seeing a lot of it sixth grade. You're not, if you looked at the cohorts of our current 7th and 8th graders versus them last year at 6th and 7th, that is down. I would say it's about a 1% recidivism or whatever, no, right? Say the word, did I say it right? Yeah, it's like, it's posted, right? Yeah, so it's really cool to see that. It was really cool to see that.
So it brings up the question, if we've seen such a reduction in the physical incidents, then what are you seeing the uptick in to be a parity?
Great question, because you're seeing in general misconduct type things. It could be disrespect, talking back, it could be things that have trust me, it's not the first time, not a one-time thing, it's a multiple thing. You know, a couple of, with vaping, you know, which is normal to it, it's not like it's extreme, right? It's like, those are the focal points now.
Yep.
Okay, so how are we gonna address that now, you know?
Okay.
So you're like, that's a really good question.
The other trend we're gonna see too on here, it's gonna be repeated at the high school level, as you might notice, this OSS has gone down and ISS has gone up. Because again, some kids will do things specifically to get out of school because now they don't have to be at school. The punishment for being at school is, the consequence for not doing the work is you're gonna have to do the work. So you're gonna see that trend show itself at the high school quite a bit too, because again, these are raw numbers, not days out. So when you look at this, like Tony said, you might have a kid that's repeatedly being disruptive in class. That doesn't mean the kid's gonna get a 5-day out of school suspension automatically. Because the point behind it is, we're gonna get this kid away from the environment that's causing the issue, we're gonna bring him back after a conversation and coaching, bring him back to school so he knows, hey, this isn't okay to do. They do it again, and it becomes that progressive discipline model again. So sooner or later, we're gonna have to utilize some of those things in the toolbox. But with this part right here, yep, we're looking at a big thing, we're addressing it, but because we're addressing little things, we're seeing a lot less of it.
Yeah, but am I reading the chart on 36 wrong? Because the fighting incidences were 4 last year and now we've already had 19.
Are you looking at where are you looking at the bottom?
The fancy
Yeah,
one.
see, the numbers, because of the way they were coded, I just took finally everything, if it had the word physical in it, I just took that instead of trying to dive into each individual incident. It's like, I'm gonna add just anything physical, let's look at where we're at versus where we were and see if we're seeing any change. So that's where it kind of came from, is combining the two. So if you look at the number, I can sit down and I can show you my spreadsheet with it. You will see how it's dropped, how it truly has dropped. But then you gotta look at the cohorts too. That's the other thing, I was kind of keeping that in the back of my mind, because each class is different. They truly are. It would be interesting to see like next year, you know, how have they grown up, have they not? So that's always a difficult one to look at, because a lot of times the student that has the physical stuff in 5th grade has it in 10th grade.
Maybe the next time you come back, you focus on the top 5, where you break it up by grade level, so that you
We
actually
can-
have it, and then we can start doing the baseline.
So one of the things that this right here, and this chart is exactly what, the visual is exactly what Tony's got marked here with the little stars. So as you're looking at some of the different spotlights, really what you wanna see is, okay, what are my top 5? What are my 5 biggest things I gotta work on as a principal? So then you know this is gonna be one, we're gonna start addressing what inappropriate behavior is. We're gonna take a look at fighting, because there's 19, but also we wanna look at disruption, and we wanna look at this one, classroom behavior. So you're gonna take your highest flying numbers and you're gonna say, okay, what are we doing about it? We're not gonna wait till next year to do it.
Correct.
Let's hit it that semester, let's hit it at next quarter, let's hit it now.
Whenever you do your
Which we
review,
are
you can-
doing already, which I'll explain in a moment too, we're already addressing some of those things too, on top of, you know, all the other things, and it's, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? But I think it's nice to have the people
Yes.
to do it.
And the culture shift, right, that comes with that, because the expectations then have to line up with the culture, and when it's consistent, then students know what to expect.
And I think with that, it's seeing, you know, if you remember from the original slide, one of the first ones about the school culture, this is where our New Start Council, a group made up of kids, is, I don't think they recognize what they're actually doing. You know, they just wanted, it started with wanting to have we wanna have a voice, we wanna say something, we don't like this game at the assembly, that's what it started with. And now, now it's turning into them speaking to classes, it's turning into them creating they want an assembly every week. And and they plan them all, by the way. They're keeping class competitions, so they're starting to do things which is engaging students, all students, you know.
Wonderful leader emerging.
They're awesome, and now we're expanding to 6th and 7th grade now. We weren't ready yet, now we are. You know, and that's gonna add like things that go ahead with the other stuff.
Yeah, when you talk about like all the different tiers here, right, I'm like, we're really in the business of like growing kids and having them be successful in the real world, so part of that obviously is academically, but also the other part is leadership, and some of this is just so natural where kids are coming out and saying like, we wanna have a voice in this, so like Tony's done a great job of working with those kids with the Star Council that he started, which is like to the assemblies and stuff like that, and school dances. And at the same time, we have the web leaders, which is something that's already been in place, but then we kind of took a look at that with the teachers that run it and said like, well, how can we do more with it? And so one of the things that we've done is we've gone down to the elementary school and we've done some events with them where those kids kind of come down and talk about being in middle school and what that's like, and this is how you behave, right? And kind of model that behavior. So there's a lot of really K-12 stuff that's going on, and also just like kudos to our teammates down at the elementary school, and also with Christina and John up at the high school, because we've talked about tutoring and stuff like that coming down. They had, you know, in other districts, they might say we're too busy with our stuff now, we can't meet, let's plan it this summer. And she's taken time out of her schedule to like, you know, meet with me during the week and start planning out some of these tutoring things, and same thing with the elementary school APs of like being able to get together and say like, yeah, we want kids in our school, and when are they coming back? And our kids just wrote some letters back to our kids up in the middle school, so you're getting that whole community piece going on. So it's been really cool. I mean, in a couple months that I've worked with these guys to be able to have that kind of almost, you know, team forming, where I think a lot of other schools, you don't have it that strong, so that's been really great.
And the more we're talking, the more it's like, if you're thinking, it's all over the place, right? Welcome to middle school, because there's so many different things going on. That's kind of strategically, if you look up there, those are a lot of things that we're doing already. You know, realistically, we're trying, you know, there's so many different things going on, but as I kind of stated earlier, all of it's all connected to education. It's all connected to learning, to whether test scores, whatever. So you know, we're trying to figure out, learn our environment, to be honest with you. Learn what the past was, learn what was done, build off of that instead of reinventing anything, and then adding what we, I guess, the word proven, I don't know if that's a proper term, but we know it's worked in the past, and at least if it didn't work, guess what? Trial and error, get rid of it, let's go to another thing.
Yep.
We'll figure something else out. We're not opposed to that. So we just, you know, we gotta figure out, but no different than what we then teach kids in the world. It's like, try it, adapt it, figure it out, be flexible. If it works, great. If it doesn't, never get too high, never get too low. Let's figure it out. So I think a lot of those things, and even a couple things to highlight when you see the Polaris plan and student contracts. Those are if you remember those 31 kids that were kind of struggling. Some of those kids have movement. The Polaris is basically a behavior intervention plan for kids. It's like you build upon what, you know, you learn about them from their family's perspective, the teacher's perspective, their own personal perspective, and you try to build something based on a couple behaviors that they're showing. And then some contracts will lead to if this, then this, so holding accountability to it. So we're starting to implement some of those things, which is new. It's new, I'd say for reg ed especially, regular ed kids, it's brand new. And it's a learning process for everybody involved, especially the staff who's not accustomed to that. And it takes a lot of it's a lot of follow-up, and quite honestly, a lot of adjusting. Oh, this didn't work, get rid of it, let's add this, but parents are involved with it, like parents like basically sign off on it, but they already know about it. You know, so it's getting everybody, and it helps with the students, they understand, oh, we have the principal, the teachers, my parents,
Give
okay,
us
so
your-
everybody's watching me now,
There's that
they're all watching me.
You know,
They're all, and you try to do whatever you can, it doesn't work for every single person.
What does SST stand for in the middle?
Student support teams, basically, if there's certain students that are coming, you know, when houses meet.
Yep.
And, you know, I was at one today, it ended up being about some concerns about somebody that's not a concern, not negative, it's like, okay, what are we seeing, what can we do?
Perfect.
And that's something that we have throughout the district,
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah,
in each
the
level,
district.
so
We're
it might look different, but yeah.
Different
Sometimes it's
acronym.
just the acronym.
Yes,
I
yeah,
love
it's
that.
acronym.
As soon as
There's
you
a lot.
said it, I heard it, I was like, yep.
After the Friday is gonna be the same acronym, and we are gonna be having different levels, because we're gonna be setting that up with our guidance counselors and our
Okay,
social workers and our school psychs. So that's one of the things we've got on our professional development plan for Friday when we get together. It's also part of what Alec is working on with us for the behavior intervention from a multi-layer systems support framework. So we're gonna be utilizing that as a training platform where we can start taking that throughout the entire district too. But really it boils down to what does the SST process look like at the elementary schools? What does it look like at the middle school? What does it look like at the high school? What's working for each level? What can we steal from one another? What can we get rid of to supplant with one another? So that's really gonna be part of the process we're gonna be doing this Fridays, and all of us are getting together. About 30 of us out in the room hashing this out, along with some other more, like, not as cheerful things. So,
And then the huddle, we put huddle up there too, because huddle is like the precursor to the SST. Okay, that's step one, okay, let's try to get ahead of it. Not working, a lot of different things maybe put into place. What we're really gonna look at this summer is systems. This to this to this, something that's visible, and hopefully K-12 wise, we can keep building, that's the key. What I've learned, at least in my world, that's the key, it's, you know, you want it, same lingo, a lot of the same things, that helps kids. That's what really helps is kids, if they're hearing the same things, that's how you build it.
language.
You don't wanna start in 11th grade, it's difficult, so.
Right.
Anything
Great
else you
work.
want to
Yeah.
Any questions?
Great work.
Thank you.
I just had a quick question. Of those 30% that seem to be recidivative offenders of your thing,
Yeah.
are those students involved in clubs or sports or?
That's an excellent activity, or excellent question, and so that's one of the things that when we meet in these, whether it's, usually it's parent meetings, could be attendance parent meetings, sometimes it's a behavior meeting where it's like we keep seeing these things and we bring parents in and we're like, what's going on here? And that's, I know one of the things that we try and do right away is like, what do you like? Like, what's gonna kind of get you roped in your group, who's your contacts? Cause sometimes those kids, it's like, I was just in a meeting this morning where it was like, I feel like I don't really have any other student connections, and so then it was a talk of like, well, what do you like to do? And we were able to, I was sitting with guidance counselor, 2 parents and Ms. Bartel, social worker, and we were able to kind of figure out, okay, these are two, a sport and a club, that would be a really good fit for you. And now, you know, like I said, we're gonna give that a try, and he's gonna get involved in that. I think it's gonna be something that's really
Excellent.
getting them on the right track,
So
so.
like fight and get them in the rest.
Or they,
That's where it said all is heard, that was one of the last things on there, that's exactly what he's saying, it's like, we had the layer club where I used to teach, it was like fighting with like rubber swords. Because kids were interested, seriously, but kids were interested in it,
Sure.
you know what I mean, and so somebody said, and then all of a sudden,
And that's
Well,
where,
back to the whole student driven, I know the high school has like 40 activities that are kind of like like clubs. So maybe the same thing happens at North where.
yeah, and we're exploring other types of clubs that would, you know, that would get to our more non-traditional students, that would get into clubs like track or whatever.
Yeah.
So we actually have like an esports meeting, I know they have at the high school, so we actually have that with a person tomorrow with Mr. Perkins, our athletic director, so that was really successful. Middle school club at a previous school district I was at, which became actually our biggest club. And so that's a way to just hook in some more kids where, you know, they feel that they're
Well, you
part
have
of the
some really
Mountain Falls
sweet,
community, and, yeah.
A lot like computer lab type stuff that you can leverage, so.
the interesting thing is thinking about that is like, okay, how do we, you know, when you stabilize the time and when it meets, it's like that's one thing, the hang up that I've run into is like getting them there and getting them home. You know, and coming from places that used to have busing, you know, the late bus,
The activity bus.
the late bus,
Yes.
you know, that helps a ton, you know, and things like this, so you're navigating some things as well. You know, and I'm not asking for having late buses, I'm just saying it'd be nice because some of these students can't get to and from.
well, speaking of the high school, last but not least, we have
We totally discussed
Mr.
it.
Bonner and Mr. Well, I was like 54 minutes ago, I was like, I hit a buzzer alarm at 10:20, 11 o'clock now.
Tanya talked a long time too.
He likes you better. Alright, so we're gonna hand it over to John and Christina, and they're gonna do the presentation for the high school.
Alright, a lot of what you guys are gonna hear is repetitive from what you already heard, so I'm not gonna go through everything in detail. If you have questions, let me know. But the first part is kind of our version of what we're calling student commitments. And so we presented this to students at the beginning of the year in grade level assemblies, like this is our expectations to make this a safe and successful place for everybody. So looking at, we call it False Pride, which is engage, empower, excel. Like how are you engaging in schoolwork and extracurriculars, and how are you excelling in that, etc. How are we ensuring a safe learning environment? And then how are you using the resources and support that we have available to make sure that you're successful here and we can help you? And so really using this language and making sure that everybody's aware of these opportunities and expectations and being really clear and consistent. So I just wanted to start with that because it's kind of like the language that we're using when students come into behaviors. And so you've seen this. Attendance at
Right.
95 to 95%, so holding steady. I feel like our attendance is going really well. Not much to say with that.
And of course, you got one outlier, two outliers here and there that can have a pretty detrimental effect on this, and we've talked about that in other meetings before, is that, you know, you have a student that has been at school for years, and that will have an impact on your attendance rate and your truancy rate and some of the other things too. But they have done a great job putting some things in place with the judge in town too, that worked through truancy court too, which is one of the things that middle school, high school.
This is breakdown, it's a little confusing, but period is tardy, because we go by all of our periods, we have odd and even days, and, but, so you'll notice on the right is this year, and, in the afternoon, our tardies are decreasing, in the morning, it looks like they are increasing, doesn't look like they are. And we, for a year and a half now, have had a unexcused tardy system where students are accountable for their absences if they're tardy, and through detentions, through other systems, we have a social worker set up where at a certain point she'll reach out and send communication to families to see like what's going on, is it transportation in the morning, what can we help you with, and then she pulls the students in and talks with them, which has been really great effort on her part. So we are doing a lot. I would like to point out that chronic tardies, which would be, we pick at 15 unexcused tardies, and this is for the whole semester, okay? So 15 unexcused tardies, only 2% of our population has got there. So the data doesn't look, like when I first looked at that, I was like, that doesn't look great. But 98% of our population is not what we would consider chronic tardy. And almost 90% have had less than 5. So, you know, there's students, especially when you're driving yourself, it might be later day or two. But we're really concerned about is the students that are chronically doing this and what we can do to support them. So I think that that's something to note, and looking at the systems we have in place for that.
Again, one of the things we talk about, the data is what the data is, we're at where we're at, I mean, you don't
Well,
sugarcoat
that's
it.
significantly more, and we're not even through the full year
You got
yet,
it.
so.
So as you start looking
It's
at,
yearly to date for the first one too.
Yeah.
It was the February.
Okay.
so these are apple to apples.
Okay.
Yep, semesters.
But when you do look at it, if we wouldn't be looking at this data at all, you'd never notice, hey, there are some things going good up here because we're cutting down quite a bit in the afternoon. However,
Absolutely.
we've got something to figure out in the morning.
Yep.
Something's going on here. I remember there's a story about a bus incident in Las Vegas where there was one school in particular, they had the one lane bus that kept causing all these different things. But if you don't look at the data and figure out where you're at, you're never gonna know there's an issue that needs to get fixed, so. And that's gonna lead to one of the other things that they've done at the high school so far this year too.
And this is similar to what you guys have seen, but systems have been put in place over the last year to 3 years with hallway systems and attendance, making sure students are where they need to be and accounted for. Talking about the unexcused tardy system and tying that in with all attendance and detentions and just being accountable. And so to Tanya's point, we don't expect perfection, but you know, if you are missing class and you're not excused, to be accountable for that and being very consistent and clear, and they know what the expectations are and what to do. We have our monthly truancy meetings and working with the truancy court. And so just using that as a way to help families understand the significance and what they can do moving forward to make sure their students are in school.
So truancy court is new, it's one of the things that they're doing when they go to, if they have a submission of a truancy, they'll be there with the judge, they'll be there with the families, and they'll be there basically like almost like a DA or an assistant DA presenting the case to the school for truancy and why we did it.
And we just started that this year, correct?
So often in the past, what would happen is they'd show up and then there would be nothing there, and the parents would say, well, this is why, the judge would say, okay, that makes sense, and then throw it away.
Right, not that big of a deal.
Now, there's, again, enhanced accountability on this, 'cause by the time that it reaches the level of truancy, we've done anything and everything possible
Sure.
to get this kid to school. We've helped the parents, we've offered different interventions. We've gone well above and beyond what any school district has done that I've ever worked with before we go through with the truancy. So having that in place now, again, it's an enhanced accountability. It's not a magic wand by any means. If you've got a kid who's been gone out of school for 6 years straight and hasn't shown up a single day, it's not gonna fix it. But from our standpoint, we're doing our job from an accountability standpoint. So it's just one of those other things, we're gonna keep trying the things that work, and if it does work, hopefully we save a couple times and the kid's gonna come to school more often. If it doesn't, well, then we did our part, and it's time for them to do theirs.
Clear communication, same as the other schools, just making sure consistently communicating. At the high school, they have daily attendance calls if your student miss, and then also weekly attendance calls about detentions. And then doing a lot of work with families that we're concerned about if you would take the 30, but in this case for attendance and behavior too. But spending time over the summer and coming up, and throughout the year, but summer's a nice time, to come up with like incentive plans for attendance for this year / behaviors, putting those in contracts. So it kind of ties in when we'll talk about behaviors too, but really working with those students and families, especially at the high school level, because students have a lot of ownership in what they're doing. And then working on celebrations. I think you guys all know about the excellence breakfast that our staff puts on, and they do a great job, and just other ways to celebrate good attendance.
We had a pretty big one recently. Mr. Bauer was telling us about it on Friday, that had to structure it differently because there were so many kids that were doing so good.
It's great.
One thing, and I don't know if you're gonna get to it, you're gonna be talking about the detention system that's modified.
We'll talk about it.
Okay.
This is just kind of us, what we're doing and also next steps, so working with the county on just best practices and other ideas from other schools and outside agencies and ways to help, working with truancy court and the judge. Potentially looking at like digital hall passes to help monitor in the hallways, that would help with attendance, would help with that after school activities, a whole bunch of different things, entering and leaving the building for lunch, so looking at that. Mr. Bonner will talk more about pilot school, or the Power School detention plugin, but that kind of goes with attendance and behavior and monitoring those. And then just working with target groups based on the data that we're seeing. So in the past, it was like new families, looking at some tardy data in the morning for those families, so just using the data we have to help.
Okay, so that leads us to the behavior side of things, which I'll talk about too. So this one is kind of that overview that you've seen, the subtypes from everyone else. The one on the top is obviously from last year, and then the bottom is year to date. So the big areas that we're tackling is cell phone, and so that one is green on the bottom left. Obviously, that's an initiative that we've had in our building. And so that's one thing where, those would be students that are having the write-up for a cell phone violation. And it's considerably higher because we've taken the initiative this year to make sure that we are nipping that right away. That goes back to the whole conversation that we've all said of mind the little things and then, the bigger things later will take care of themselves, right? The other two areas that we've looked at, I'm kind of combining. The one on the far right is truancies, and then that orange one, and then the one on the far left. This one, I kind of skewed the data, I suppose, because this is that Power School plugin that I'll talk about in a minute. So the one on the left is attendance detentions, and so I'll talk about that when I get to the plugin. But basically, some of this is I'm combining it together because you would get a detention for 5+ tardy unexcused, just like what Ms. Taylor just said, as well as you get detention for truancy. So that bar on the far left was never on there before at the top because this is something new that we're piloting that I'll talk about in just a minute. Otherwise, the obvious one is classroom behavior is the consistent. So before that bar on the left came in, classroom behavior would have been the third one. So
Out of curiosity, can you tell if the cell phone is front loaded where it's September and October? As it's not, it's consistently still work happening?
Yeah.
Is it repeat offenders or new?
There's a few. I think we've gotten to the point of we have like behavior contracts in place. We have a system in place where if you're a repeat offender, then it's bringing in family members, talk about it, and see what we can do to reduce that from happening, why is this a distraction still?
Okay.
Yeah, I would say the majority, I don't have the data on that, but I'd say the majority are, you know, one and done. But there's a small percentage that, you know, we're working through behavior contracts with families.
Okay.
Yeah, any other questions on that? Okay. So, you know, consistent suspension data that we were talking about, so, year to date, you see last year, September to February, and then on the right, September to February. In school suspensions, we had 23 last year and then 30 this year. But once again, that goes to the point of, you know, that progressive discipline where it's, you know, taking care of the little things and hopefully not have to get to the bigger part. And that's also what we talk about where they're in school and this is a controllable thing where they can work on things while they're in school compared to we don't control what's happening when they're out of school. They might just need you know, a different area to be working in, if that makes sense. Out of school suspensions, last year was 31, and then we're at 26 this year. So ultimately what we're trying to do is make sure that, you know, if they can stay in the building, if it's not a safety situation, then obviously it's like, let's try that first before we go on to anything further. And so that's why the numbers, you know, they're, you know, more in school suspension, but, you know, less out of school because we're obviously trying to keep them in school as best as possible. And so our totals are pretty similar, so that would be that comparison. Okay, and so once again, minding the little things as we talked about. So, and you've heard this a lot, but staff is logging behaviors, that's also why the cell phones are, you know, that high because, yeah, we're making sure on top of that, even all the behaviors, we wanna make sure not everything always has 100% a consequence, but sometimes it's a conversation. So that's where when we log things like we just talked about, you're, you know, pulling in that student and having a conversation with them, you know, and making sure that this isn't happening again, if that makes sense, because we don't know what we don't know, so that's why we're asking them to log things. Also clear and consistent consequences, so if we're consistent across the board in the building with each other, and tie that in with Mr. Gebauer, then it's kind of a situation where it's, you know, we make sure we get our student statements, we communicate clearly with families, and then everybody's getting the same progressive consequences that way, and so if we hit it right at the beginning, that's where we're starting to get less and less over the course of the year of the bigger things. Also, you know, when we talk about interventions, we do behavior contracts, so that's whether that's a cell phone or that could be any other sort of discipline, making sure that parents are involved with this, and we're going through and like piecing out what is the problem, how can we fix it, how can we move forward. And then that communication piece is huge, when we are communicating with families, you know, we talk about it, we get the information from the students, we get all the reports, we talk with families, what can we do to team up together to make sure this isn't happening anymore? And sometimes that even includes bringing in family members into the building, let's sit down and have a conversation, because, you know, at that point, you know, let's stop this from happening, right, if it gets to that part. And our celebrations are really, you know, the same as what Christina just said, you know, you got our excellence breakfast and behavior is heavily tied into that, you know, in order to be a part of that. So that's a really big celebration that kids are loving to be a part of, and so that is also reducing a lot of things, as far as in the behavior side. I think the next one, yeah, there we go. Classroom disruptions. So basically this is where we are continuing to build relationships, right? So those tier 1 interventions and behavior supports, now we're looking at, let's have that conversation. Where can we go from here? Is this something that will be continuing to happen? How do we stop it from happening? And so that's why we're trying to figure out to reduce those pieces there. And once again, collaborating with family. And then I will also say one of the things, one data point that we have, we've had 3 incidents of physical altercations this year, which is down from 9 last year, which is down from 13 the year before. So this is now progressively going down compared to years past, and I think that's the consistency of everything that Ms. Taylor and Mr. Gebauer have done, and I'm just stepping in this year helping, so. But I think that's really a big piece of this, being clear and consistent with everything, with those consequences and communication. We are down at the bottom, when we talk about cell phones, Yes, we are also making sure that we are communicating with families. Mr. Langer does a really good job at the school, helping with this and making sure that, he's really respectful to students when we were talking about their consequences, and he's really respectful to families, and it's an awesome piece to see that consistency with that, and enforcement of it all across the building with all of the teachers. And this leads us to these bottom 2 points, which are digital hall pass. That's one area that we're exploring to try to reduce truancies and tardies. This would be a piece that would add on for like efficiency possibly. This is a company that we already pay for in the district, but we're looking into seeing that because now this is something that, we can track a lot better who's in the hallway and reduce the amount of kids out in the hallway or just out of class, or know if they're even in the vicinity, if that makes sense. So we are exploring that right now.
I'm sorry to interrupt you,
yeah.
but, so this would be something that it's like a locator then? Explain the digital.
It's like an Apple.
Sure. Yeah, so for instance, if they're.
It's more information.
I've talked to a couple companies about this, Net Efficiency is the next one that we have to talk to. But basically what it is, if a student is in the classroom, let's say, there's a system within the building that would have your digital ID. And so you can lock, so that way maybe you're like, these two students probably shouldn't be in the hall together. And so when the kid goes to do their hall pass, it might be grayed out, and it won't tell them the reason why, but it'll be grayed out, and then they're gonna have to wait until that is clear. So maybe the other student comes back, checks back in, and then they can see, now I can go back out. So that could also, you can also control that at the building level as well as the teacher level to make sure that students are staying in class, the maximum amount of minutes.
After having eyes where you guys can't have them, that's really good.
Yeah.
Digitalized.
Yep.
And this kind of ties into another thing that we're going to be going on a visit for, that we've brought up in this committee before, about our signaling tags.
Yep.
And that was one of the things that they had brought to Mr. Gebauer when we met with him at the high school. So we'll be going on a tour of this company that might actually have a connection to this as well.
There we
So
go.
another possible vendor opportunity to explore to see who's gonna have the best offer for us.
And a big piece of this, obviously, if you can control who's in the hallways and in the bathrooms, that would all obviously now reduce behaviors and things like that too. Because now you know who's in the bathroom at any given time when you pull up the report. Yep. And then the other thing, like I had mentioned, that PowerSchool detention plugin, that's why that one blue bar on the left started to go up, because what we're working on, this is, we're piloting it, it's already working at the high school. It's no extra cost to the district, we already had PowerSchool, they just keep adding these new plugins, and so Kara helped us start tracking this, where now, if you're getting your 5+ tardy unexcused in the building, then the detention goes right in, it's not just behavior. Lisa will start, or she has started to enter those as well as truancies. So now we can actually pull reports and now see, this will actually help. I just tried it the other day with like all the sports teams. So I can just pull a report, Mr. D'Amato's, his class, and then I pull up wrestling, and then I see, okay, these kids, this is how many, not that wrestling kids get detentions, but now it's,
They used to.
they used to, yeah. So now we're tracking them better.
Not much of that.
Now you can see there's, 60 minutes detention, and then it shows a green check if they've served it, and then a red X if they haven't served yet. So now coaches can be holding kids more accountable, because now we have a report that takes literally 10 seconds to pull. Callie has been sending those out to coaches, and they can clearly see, all right, you gotta serve your detention before you're in your next competition.
The good thing about that is it's instant.
Yep.
It's real time stuff, not going back
Well, not just seeing
last
the grade
semester.
aspect, now seeing the behavior.
And that was one of the things that they determined was a missing component of accountability.
Yeah.
For sure.
And just like that, within a month, it was in place now. So.
Yep.
And that's with grades too?
So this is only on, we track detentions based on behaviors, like all that, and then on attendance. So truancies and the tardy unexcused.
Well, yeah, that's what I meant. I meant
Yeah,
if the coaches can see, okay, this kid's got an F, he can't play tonight or whatever.
So that's a separate tracker. So
Okay.
I'm just talking about behavior right now.
Got it.
Yep.
But if you've got
Behavior and
a
attendance.
struggling student for a variety of reasons, you now have the ability to have data for both halves of the
Absolutely.
house and be a part of the intervention if something's going on.
Absolutely. And now it's way easier for us to now start tracking, how many kids are serving their detentions versus not, and then that opens up the conversation of, what capacity do we have to have these conversations with families for attendance detentions versus behavior to get them to serve it and then reduce those times that they're late or things like that to try to get those numbers down.
That's great.
So,
Yeah.
Yep, so, Carrie did a great job at, helping us implement that, and it's working well so far. We're only like 3 weeks, I think, or 2 weeks in trying it, but,
And our Miss Luckett does a great
Yes,
job with
I'm
the
sorry.
system, like setting up the system, and she's been working with that, so again, it's a team effort across the building with all of these is what
Yeah.
we wouldn't have the capacity.
Like with the kids checking into the detention.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
all aspects of it, I mean, that's really important to know,
Well-
like, all their hard work.
and the best part of that, and I apologize, I didn't bring up Miss Luckett, she did sit and actually all the behaviors from the entire year, she sat down and actually manually entered them into the system, and now we have a scanner, which is awesome, so the kids can bring their ID to the detention room, scan it, shows exactly how many minutes they have to serve, and then clock starts, and then when they leave, then those minutes have come out because then they check out, just like library card, so.
Interesting.
Yep, so, we're testing it out, and, it's going well so far.
Good. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fingering fakes.
Yeah.
We don't need to give them any more ideas. Yeah, right. This is-
Well, they already
So it's an employment opportunity for somebody. $50 over here.
Any other questions?
Nice job, everybody. Thanks for
Yeah, thank you very much
a
for your
long,
time.
lengthy discussion and prep work, so much appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if it's okay with the board members here, I'm gonna excuse all the administrators except Mr. Halverson and myself. You can stay if you choose to, but I know it's getting a little late, you guys have been here for several hours and we have a couple other parts of the agenda to get to, but feel free to stay if you choose to, but by all means, have a good night, and I'll be at Valley View tomorrow.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
I wanna see more of the, bring it out and have it already.
You know what though, Tony, I got to say, you made these slides.
No, I-
That's one you can use the next time.
I know, I wanted to know, oh, okay, I can see it, I can.
Everybody else is home. I'm like,
You should have seen it before.
I got yelled at.
Yeah, 87 slides.
Oh, you were ready to go.
Because you can anticipate what the questions are. Like this question, I knew exactly what you were looking at that chart, I was asking the same question.
Yeah.
When you saw the numbers, I would bet, I'm ready for it. Yeah, anytime you want, I'll show you the break.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you,
Have a
thank you
good night.
very much.
See ya.
See ya.
All right, so we'll dive right into, next on the agenda is webpage status update.
So you may recall shortly after the last committee meeting,
I was like,
we talked about putting in
looking
a new app called Site Improve. And Site Improve was a way for us to measure basically every single component of our webpage use and also get us kind of on a pattern for becoming ADA compliant, which by federal law, based upon the size of our village, that we have to have done before 2027. So Site Improve has provided us a real nice platform for all the things we need fixing, and now we're starting to structure how we're going to address those things that need fixing. And Troy's put together a lot of things, he's been doing a lot of training on it, he's got a training set up for this Friday for our webmasters. And that's going to be a live training, but then we're also gonna record it so that people that are at other trainings are gonna be able to watch it too. So we went from, and I don't know if I had that slide included in there or not, the first week that we had been in place, after him and I had met with Site Improve and we went through our own classes that we had to do to become basically supervisors of it. We had gone up, we started at like, the biggest one was we started at 62 and then within a week after I had done some corrections, he had done a lot of different corrections and implementations. The quality assurance index went up to like 71, so we had a 9-point jump within a week. Now, we just got a new report yesterday that both of us were a little concerned of because now we went down again. And we have to figure out where those locations are that changed between last week and this week. So within not just our webpage, but the athletic webpage, there's a lot of different updates that get put in. And one of the biggest things that we noticed that are causing errors are names. So when you have an unusually spelled name, which again is just the way it is, it'll trigger that this is an error. So then you go in and you say, is this an error? No, this is a false positive, and then you make the correction on it.
Does it get intelligent? So I'm assuming some of the names are, cause I don't know that we have player rosters out there, but they're probably unique school names, so then it's a matter of once it fixes it, does it learn it so it doesn't flag it again?
We actually can control the names when they come in, so say for
Okay.
example, I'm just gonna use a random name, and this is not a student or anything else, but let's say it was a name like Halversonism.
Right.
And because that doesn't seem like a real name, it'll say, is this a real name? And then you go in there and say, yes, this is a real name, and then it'll never trigger it again.
Got it.
So when we start looking at some of the different names in our community that come up, and they're not necessarily easy to tell words, that's what's going on.
Got it.
So we have more added into the webpage for the athletics because of the rosters and even from out of town rosters. And we have to go back in and correct them like that, but then they'll pick those up over time because it's that AI
Right.
bot that's doing it.
I think we have a three-year agreement with Site Improve, right?
Actually, one of the nice things about Site Improve was we were anticipating, they were very good, we negotiated a year and a half. So we've got through this year, which was the half, and then we're anticipating we're still gonna have repairs to do to get us ADA compliant, so then we got a year. And then we can come back and renegotiate after a year, but it is nice of them to do it, because normally they either do 3 or 5 year contracts, they don't give a short-term contract. And one thing that we generally do, like David and I talk about, is we don't wanna get stuck into a platform, especially with technology changing so fast, when there's other ones that could get picked up, so we don't gotta get kinda in.
Yeah, a couple of my superintendent friends put me in on this site. Several districts use this site in order to manage broken links and to try to improve their websites, and there's a metric, there's a way to report to a group like this, quite honestly, publicly, and say, here's where we're at. Now, we're at the point where we understand the system, we've initiated some systems, now we're gonna roll it out because we have webmasters throughout the district.
Okay.
We have partial positioned or stipend positioned throughout the district, people in all the buildings that need to get, and that's this Friday.
Yep.
So this Friday, they're gonna get some professional development about, okay, here's how they can assist, because we're measuring the entire district's website, but also the athletic website.
Mm-hmm.
It's doing both.
Right.
And that's a monster, but it's something that the training is coming this Friday, we're excited about the possibility and the metric, we're able to measure it.
And then they can measure it, so they'll
Yes.
actually see a direct result of the changes they make too.
Yeah, they can see.
So the training this Friday is gonna not only get everybody up to speed on the webpage, because this is a webpage training. They're gonna actually train how to make changes, things to look for, what you can do. We're gonna be doing a lot of background cleaning of files that are from 2007, I think, was some of the older ones we saw that are on there. That got migrated into ours. But then once they get the base knowledge of how to operate on a web platform, then we're gonna start hitting them with Site Improve, and here's the data how to do it. Site Improve was pretty intuitive. When David and I first did the training with this company, it was very straightforward. It was like, here's your numbers, here's how to fix it. You can fix it within their app on our platform. So it'll actually go to those links. I have 2 screens open when I do it. I can watch here where it tells you to fix, and I'll go here and actually fix it. So it's a really,
Yeah.
it's a very, very good program for not a lot of money.
And we didn't have anything in place before, so
No.
a lot of the stuff that was dead ends had to be reported in order for it to be,
Or
or hopefully fixed.
click,
Right.
me doing click and going down a rabbit hole, or, you know.
There's no way-
Somebody had to sit there on their computer and
I did it, I
push
actually put
buttons.
together,
Yeah.
like,
And
spent 3 hours of my own time trying to figure out information that was relevant and links that were relevant.
And now we can measure it, we can target it and come at it from a systematic way and say, okay, we're at
Mhm.
70%, we wanna be at 80%. Probably never be at 100% because there's always gonna be something changing. But you wanna be in like the, what is it, 80, 85.
I was gonna say, what is the ADA compliance requirement? Do they expect a
That's gonna be a
hundred?
different one.
Well,
because-
that's, we're building up to
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
So when you look at ADA compliance, there are so many different things that they're putting in place that are still changing.
Oh,
So if I put a
still
picture,
fluid.
I have to caption it. If I have a video, I have to caption it. I have to have all those things tied together.
Right.
If I have a caption that's talking about a video, I have to provide a different setup for it. So there's a lot of different things where you're addressing a lot of different needs. So it's that's gonna be a big one. I'm glad they gave us the 2027, so.
Okay.
But it is going in a good direction, which is nice, very
Cool.
nice.
Yeah, that's good, it's a big project.
Well, and the only thing I'll say is there is a lot of content on our website. And so to the extent that you need to manage inventory for ADA, both on the website, maybe consider scaling back
We're
the
gonna
content that's out there
definitely-
because that
About
becomes,
simplifying.
yeah, to be able to reduce,
There's
there's so
two
much.
Yeah,
big
there
things
is.
we're talking about, like migrating into our webpage. And we do have a lot of separate pages that we operate out of Google Sites.
Mhm.
Which in our district, we, just in case you didn't know, our devices aren't allowing students to get on Google Sites because it opens the door for so many things from a cybersecurity standpoint that could corrupt our network.
Yep.
So when you look at what we've got in place for Google Sites, we have to migrate those out of our main webpage, there's a cost involved with that.
Yep.
Right now, our athletic webpage is run separately through BSN contracts, which BSN runs VNN, which is our network provider, but that's for free because it's tied into how we schedule our athletic events, and that also comes for free. So our sports comes with it, and then BSN runs that, which runs VNN, BSN and VNN are fighting right now. So
Oh, fun.
we are in a good possibility where we might lose some of our access to our webpage, so we need to migrate that into our main webpage anyways, and we can have one webpage.
Okay.
Not have to mess around with all the other stuff that we've talked about a lot.
Right.
And what a mess
A lot of
that
time.
big monster is.
This all, I mean, this is a huge project,
For sure.
but Site Improve is a good way to center the work. I'm really thankful to the superintendents and other, to several of the superintendents in Waukesha County are like, you gotta do this.
Yeah, what are you doing?
This, you gotta do this now. And several of them, you know, and I was like, oh, let me talk to somebody, and then put Halverson in touch with their people, and so it's really good. You go to some of those meetings and it's more about meeting people and asking about problems that you have that
Best
they've already
practices,
solved, and hey, let's solve it the way you solved it, and you know.
Right.
Same thing we're doing with those that are sitting on the finance and building and grounds. We have a sponsorship program that we're really close to ready to roll out. Well, we've been working on that based with a lot of feedback with Waukesha County and different parts, different districts in Waukesha County with permission. And we're developing hybrid, so we're close to being ready to roll that out here within the next, same idea.
Right.
It's along the same idea.
Well, again, that's what the whole payoff in relationships are, that you guys have great
Right.
working relationships.
Right.
And then you build
Makes us
up.
way more efficient.
Yeah.
I did, and Troy has really taken the ball and ran with this thing, and setting up the trainings for us and setting up the trainings for him. But in the background, he's also still just plugging and chugging, and instead of me having to go 2,000 corrections manually, or Isabella going through and waiting for emails to come in, that's able to go and say, okay, here's a targeted approach, I'm gonna start working on this, I'm gonna start working on this, I'm gonna start working on this. So I started working on spelling corrections, he was working on the ADA compliance piece in the background, so it started getting some of those components repaired too, so. It's been a very, very good, fortunate program that we linked into, thanks to those guys.
Great.
Good.
Scorecard.
Alright, yeah, scorecard.
So scorecard you should see, and again, I leave this on there for every meeting so you can kind of get an idea of anything else that's in there. There has been a couple of updates that I had added to it. So if you did want to take a look at that, I don't have it on this minute one. But there were some additions, not just for Site Improve, which I put on there, but also from a safety security standpoint. And then also from what John had mentioned about the tensions. So with the communication
right.
piece being enhanced with families, what they're doing, and that was one thing they didn't bring up. When a student doesn't serve a detention or they have a certain amount of tardies, they're getting auto email to the student and the families now. So if they don't serve a detention, the email goes to the student, then the email goes to the family. When that report gets run, and this is the accountability piece that was kind of nice, now we know about it. Up until about a month and a half, I think we started thinking that John had started saying, we gotta figure out how to do this because our kids aren't serving detention. And they're showing up at athletic events, they're doing some of these things, there's no accountability here. So he started looking at those digital hall passes and talked to Kara about it. Kara's like, why would you do that? We can do it at our own. So then we started building it internally, and she went over there and trained with those guys for like 3 or 4 times and said, let's get this in place. Boom, they put it in place.
I'm
So-
already paying for it.
And it's like, it's
That's
paid for.
free functionality.
It's
And
like-
the consistency, you're not
I bet
our
asking the
students
teachers to
love it.
learn one more program.
Again, so back to it, so when you look at the consistency part of discipline.
Yeah.
The one component that's missing is accountability. If you're not, yeah, I can punish them all day long, but if you're not getting the consequence behind it, what's the point?
Yeah.
So now we've got that accountability piece, and at the same time, it has communication with families, so everybody's looped into it. So now the parents can address it at home along with we're addressing it.
And that's working smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
So we talked to-
I wanted to bring this up when they were all in here, but I didn't wanna take any more of their time. The digital hall passes, would the student have a digital hall pass
That's-
on their phone?
So Tony had mentioned that too, so he used a program called eHall Pass, which was an ePass, which was another one that's out there too.
Yep.
You can actually set it up with ID badges.
I was thinking it would be-
Each
So-
student will
Each
have,
student,
okay.
so every student's supposed to have their ID
Yeah.
badges, it is. So what they can do is you can set it up like they're going for detention right now, they can scan in, scan
Yeah.
out, and they go in the hall. I think Wausau, one that I was familiar with, where they utilized it when they walk into a classroom, they take attendance with them.
Yeah.
They come in, they scan their ID, poop, it takes attendance, it tells them if they're tardy or not. There's another company that was out there called Plasco Track. So when the kids would come to school, they would scan in, it would actually print out a detention slip for them, right then and there, and say, you owe 30 minutes at lunch today. When that didn't get done, then that would trigger another report that would run too.
I like that.
So it's like one thing after the other was all built in. I didn't do it till I figured the cost of it was about $13,000-14,000 a year. When, if we get this right, we might be able to do that in PowerSchool.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that Kara was working on with that scanner, because that scanner was something we had already had in place too.
Right.
Sure.
My concern was that it was on their phone.
Yep, and that was,
They don't have their phone.
it's a tool.
Well, they have their phone, they just can't have it
Can't
out.
Right.
So it's like, oh, I had my phone out because I was gonna get a hall pass.
Yep, and that was what Tony brought
I
up too.
thought all phones have to go in a caddy in the classroom, I don't actually think they have a phone.
No, well, yeah, but when they leave the classroom, they
He
do.
was just
Oh,
trying to get
they're on the halls.
clarification on that, yeah,
Yeah.
because
So
then you
so
are.
I'm thinking
I like
all
the badge,
passes,
I like the.
I'm in the class, but I have to go to the restroom.
Yep.
And then I'm not gonna grab my phone from the caddy, I'm hoping it would be in their ID.
Yeah, I like the badge idea.
Yeah.
Cause then you're talking on both sides of your mouth.
You got it, you can have your phone up, well, I was just seeing if I could go to the bathroom right now, and no, you
Yeah.
weren't, and then you get back and forth with the argument with them.
And then,
Yeah.
and then the teacher has to deal with all those things too, on top of everything, yeah, it's just an interruption.
Right.
And then the teacher can't teach. you know?
I know in talking to the APs and Dan and the principals, I mean, they're meeting and talking and leveraging a lot of these changes many times.
Mhm.
So there's conversations that are coming just based on the meeting the partial meeting that's already just occurred tonight.
Right.
Because, you know, the vertical, the horizontal, in other words, each level is gonna do things a little bit differently,
Mhm.
just based on the nuances of age and these sorts of things. But the fact that they're a team,
Overall
like they
consistency.
talk to each other actively.
Well, the numbers
You can-
show it.
You can see that the middle school students are moving to the elementary schools, and that sort of fluid activity did not occur last year. And it's because of the nature of this team, working with Dan and the principals.
Mm-hmm.
And they're starting to make it a unified district that way from the standpoint of building it up. And you can see that culture piece, just walking into the middle school. There's been some very positive changes there, in particular, but all the buildings as well.
Yeah.
Just in different ways, but
We get the pleasure of something at the elementary school when we have trainings.
Yeah.
So for
where are you
last-
at tomorrow?
I got Riverside tomorrow.
Oh, I missed
So that was one of the things Jenny had messaged us tonight.
Oh, did she?
She and I said, I think David's got that tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
But we get to go, cause us as secondary principals, administrators, we didn't get to spend a whole lot of time at the elementary school. And I'll tell you from my standpoint, when I did sub at the elementary school, it was very, very different than what I get right now. And when we walk the buildings, we see kids and they recognize us and they know us, and it's a different feel to the buildings overall.
Yeah.
But it really does stem from a very deliberate approach that the APs have had. When we looked at just preparing for this presentation alone, and the amount of collaboration that they did in the background of me saying, here's the format, Tony creating the base like platform of it. And again, there's always a good nature of it, and that's what makes administrative teams work
Well,
the
they
best.
were having fun with each other.
And that's the biggest part of it. When
They
get
understand
together-
the story, they understand the next steps, like it is a very cohesive team that's actually.
They're all buying into the culture of.
Yeah.
That happened very quickly,
Yeah.
but
Functioning.
their principals are
Yeah.
very strong, and that helped that, you know, you had some piece, like Christina has been here, this is her third year now. Dave Peters has got multiple years, so that, the stability in those two positions.
Well, then you bring in a fresh set of eyes, but years of experience in
A
your middle
lot
school
of
ones,
experience.
it just rounds everybody out.
Yeah, the middle school APs, you know, they've been there and kind of done that. So it's more about, they did a good job of not necessarily looking at everything they've done in other districts and said, oh, let's just do that here and call it good. They took the feedback, they looked at the data here and then used their experiences to
Okay,
help make it a very
Tool belt to be
positive.
able to say, what are the options we can try versus just rebuild what they
Just
have, so that's awesome.
Just a lot of kudos to all of them for, and like I said, the vast majority of the people, Dan included, weren't in these positions last year.
It's incredible.
So
remarkable.
it's me, it's Christina, it's Dave Peters and Jenny
Yeah.
in the room. And everybody else is leveraging change in a way that's good for students.
Yeah.
You know, it's decreasing negative behaviors and increasing learning.
Yeah.
You know, that's what's in the back of
And that
what they're.
culture of wanting to learn and wanting to do the right
'Cause
thing and.
We talked a lot about attendance and discipline and intentionally didn't get into the learning part, but they're all about learning.
Oh, absolutely.
They know
It's all
that
connected.
if they can ameliorate or decrease these sorts of activities, there's gonna be higher levels of learning. I mean, that's something, I was an AP, Dan was an AP for a number of years ago now. And then when they made the comment about them being old, it took every piece of me not to say, you guys are so young. But it was a fun comment, but I mean, when you're an AP, I mean, you're still in classrooms, you're still instructional leading, but they need to do this very well,
Yes,
because that's not done very well. And this is good progress from last year to this year, it's good positive progress.
And it's like.
It's gonna help with increasing learning, it's
Well, and
just
that's
gonna
the
do
key.
that,
part of it is you want,
improving learning.
you want teachers to feel that they're supported by administration, that they are able to go in and have a lesson plan and know that they're able to get through the lesson plan without interruptions. Whether it be behavior, or
Mhm.
whatever it is, and so you start to see the whole system that was ill, sick 2-3 years ago is now improving under strong leadership that can help with the tools, set the processes, and are you seeing that teachers are buying in?
Yeah, and that's the thing, we always used to talk about teachers create the weather for the kids. Now, you walk into a classroom, you can tell whether someone loves their job or hates their job. And when you look at the people here having fun, it mirrors what's going on in the classroom right now. And as a teacher, if I'm looking at an administrator who hates their job and definitely isn't happy doing their job, that's gonna
Look at
translate
my
to the
cat.
classroom, and in my
Yep.
classroom, that's gonna translate to kids, and when it translates to kids, no learning's gonna take place. So when you start looking at the group that we've got here, how much fun it is, and we get together and we have a good time, and you know, we're there having a good time with them, and the principals are having a good time. That transfers back down to the teacher saying, hey, this is all right, we can
Nice work, guys.
we can fix on this, and we can, then it gets back to the kids, and that's what you see as a result to the relationship.
So the scorecard piece, how much of that are you gonna bring to the Monday meeting? We can talk about that,
So
or-
we're gonna have that all broken down, so that'll be slide by slide, kinda like what we had in the format before. That's the detail work, you'll see the big picture stuff on Monday, that's what we kind of do, the 30,000 foot view on Monday, and then this is the breakdown of all the
So we'll work on each of the
Just make
different,
sure when you do your presentation to refer people back to the minutes for this meeting if they want details to click on the link, cause that link's not only public, but then there for the board members as
they
well.
can see it too.
Perfect.
yeah, absolutely, and I think we'll talk about how to, cause Alec will be doing a
Yeah,
mini
he's able to.
presentation, Dan, you know, Amy will have a piece, so this is our second strategic plan update. We're looking at measures, where we said we wanna be and where we're going, so we're excited about where we are, and then for that last measure, once we get more data in for the end.
And really, that's the format that we use for the APs too, because
Yeah.
it was like, all right, look at the data, where were we? Where are
And
we
it's,
at,
I
and
mean,
where are we
honestly,
going?
I can't believe how much time has gone by and that we're already looking at new numbers and updates.
That's incredible.
It really is, so.
Yeah, I initially my thought was to do 4 updates, but the data coming in, you know, we could do 4 updates, but it's like this, the third update would be the same information as the second update, just based on when the state sends information through. Like we have certain data right now, when we get the ACT data and certain data for the end of the year, like AP, we just wanna schedule that next one late enough where we have enough data to have good feedback for the board about a final measure and then set up the next year.
And it ties in nice with our mid-interval reviews that we do with our teachers too, for
That's right.
SLOs and PPPs, all that stuff's tied in semester grades.
Alright,
Alright, perfect. Moving on to future agenda items. So looking at March, the notes I had were safety and security updates,
So we've kinda got an issue here.
badges
And one of the things,
or-
yeah, so March, we're running into an issue with the communication survey because part of the results that we're gonna need for that communication presentation are tied into our Studer survey that we're doing.
and that just went out.
You got it.
Okay.
And our March meeting, maybe you recall, we had to move up to March 3rd.
Yes.
So we're not
Yes.
gonna have enough results to do a presentation on at that time.
Okay,
So I think what would be best is if we can move that to, and we don't have one in April, but if we could maybe move the communication update, we'll have the survey results, we'll have some of the other things put in place for communication tools at the elementary school by then, that maybe we can move that to May.
well, and one thing I actually like about that idea is we have the new committee then will be on board for May.
Yeah,
oh, that's right, the new committee assignments. Right.
Yes, and so then they'll have that communication piece, like that overview as an intro.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a
And
good
I
plan.
think that that actually might end up working out well, so.
you guys don't mind, move it to May instead of March? So one of the things you heard me talk about when John was mentioning mentioned the security badges, we were able to secure a meeting, and we've been talking about this all year, this emergency triggering badge. That we wanna find a vendor that's one affordable so that we can actually do it and implement it, but also one that's gonna be able to be put in place maybe as a pilot or maybe even have us as a beta district. So they use us to experiment so we don't have to pay for it. We've got a meeting next week with a company locally called RFT Technologies out of Brookfield that actually is interested in us being a beta test group school district for those badges.
Okay,
So I don't, maybe that would be something, and that'll be enough time where I could put something together for March 3rd.
right,
And then we
because
can
the other
maybe-
third is,
We could talk about some of the other stuff we're doing for the medical response teams. We can talk about the tabletop exercises we've got in place now.
Oh, the
I
tabletops,
finalized those today, so
that's right.
there's a lot of stuff, safety, security, wise, we could do updates on too.
yeah,
The tabletop exercises, that would be very good.
Is that too much to ask the SROs to come in and give us updates? I don't wanna put any more burden on them, but.
That would be good. I don't know if they would all
available March 3rd.
need to be here, but
Maybe they nominate one.
maybe one or,
And if not, they could maybe relay the info to me or Lieutenant Milo or maybe even Captain Krasinski.
I think we
Either
could,
that or maybe they're already in the building and they can just stop in for a couple minutes.
yeah, let's put it down on the list, I'm sure we can. Let's
I just
work
wanna
on that.
highlight them, cause they do such a great job.
They do, and we're working on new contracts.
Yeah,
We're working on new contracts, a new SRO contract. I'm actually meeting tomorrow. No, not tomorrow, Tuesday, it's Wednesday with the city administrator about that. And a few other things. That's one of the topics, but there's other topics as well.
That was National SRO Day.
It sure was, I saw the
Yeah.
post. so
Yeah, those pictures, those guys are hard to get pictures of. They're pretty sneaky, yeah, but I got them, we got them.
Nice.
We got a nice little gift
I got
for
'em.
them.
Yeah, we got a Panera.
Oh, nice.
They were all jacked up.
Yeah.
That's
I was like,
good.
that's not donuts, but that's okay.
Yeah, well.
Coffee and bakery.
You're not committing any wrong. I've never seen any of them eat donuts. So they drink some serious caffeine.
They do for dinner.
Yeah.
should I make the motion to
Adjourn.
adjourn?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Alright.
Wait, I just want to
Any
confirm,
other-
are we good with our student services for next?
I'd like to
Keep
make
it
a
on the
motion to adjourn the meeting.
Fine. Travis, motion, I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned at 8:22 PM.
Come on.
Yeah.
Very good info.
Yes.